You're unmuted.
Good morning and welcome. We will open the meeting of the Board of Commissioners for the February 11th morning meeting, and roll call, please.
Janat,
Here.
Markey,
Here.
Nye,
Here.
Roloffs is excused, Sauer,
Here.
Craig,
Here.
Worsakki is excused.
You would stand for the invocation and pledge. Commissioner Sauer. Gracious God, as we come before you today to discuss important matters, we ask for your guidance and wisdom. Help us to focus on our community and be thankful for all our blessings. In your name I pray. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Commissioners, you've had the agenda in advance of the meeting. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda or changes.
Craig moves to approve the agenda.
Markey will support.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. You have the minutes of January 28th in front of you for the regular session. Any comments or questions? If there are none, I'd entertain a motion.
Craig moves to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
9 seconds.
Thank you. Again, if no comments or questions, I'll call for the approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. We'll go to our first public comment regarding the agenda.
Closed session.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. We'll delay that for a minute. Step. Session.
Markey will support.
Comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Mhm.
All right, we will move into public comment regarding items on the agenda.
My name is Annie Browning and I live in the village of Beulah. I was just looking at your agenda and I saw a couple of things that were directly relevant to me on that. And I think they're G and H under new business. So the master plan, I mentioned to you that I've been working on the master plan for the village of Beulah. So my goal is to get that approved before I move to my new home in Frankfurt. And that's just been such a long process that you all know, I'm sure. The other thing that's under new business that's relevant to me is the materials management plan. I think it was an update to the bylaws. So that was just something I've been working on. I love that I see these things that kind of overlap with what the local government is doing. That's you all. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Anna. Anybody else? If not, we'll close public comment and elected officials. Corey?
Good morning, Corey Ellis, 911 Director, Benzie County. You should all have in your packet a copy of our annual report. I'm not going to go through it page by page, but I think there's a couple to kind of go through and just highlight some of the things going on in our department. If we look at first page, that I will bring up. It's page 10. I just want to acknowledge again, Donna Stevens is one of our dispatchers. She's been here for several years now. She takes on a few extra roles as well to help make sure that we're doing what we need to do. She was recognized in 2024 as the Dispatcher of the Year. Just as a refresher, we started that in 2023. So the first one to receive that would have been Krista Ketz. Some of the things that Donna does, and she does very well, is our lean TAC officer. So last year we had an audit for Lean, and for the first time, according to the auditor, for the first time in her auditing history, which is over 2 decades, we received a 100% on our data validation. There's 2 sides of that audit. There's a data side and there's a network infrastructure side. We received a 100%. So she goes all throughout the state, and apparently in her double decades of doing this, we're the first ones. So that's pretty big for us. So she does a really good job with that. The other thing to highlight on that page is just that we are out in the community. There's a couple of pictures there. We've been to various events. We've been to the Benzonia Public Library last summer. We also went down to Frankfurt. The elementary school had a gathering of sorts. We've also been at the Elmira Township Fire Department for their Halloween event that they had. So we are out there. We're trying to help educate the public on what 911 is, what we do. And one of the things that we talk about, depending on the audience, is our Smart 911 program, which has come up here a few times as to what that is. Next page, on page 11, we are part of a regional tactical dispatch team. That's a pretty critical role that we play in that. It's a very small team. As of right now, there's only 3 counties that are a part of that. Benzie, Grand Traverse, and Antrim County. The team itself has several other counties. This is for plain language speak, this is basically the SWAT team for Northern Michigan. That's not what they're actually called, but that's the easiest way to understand it. So we're part of that team. We have somebody on that team that fills the dispatch role. Page 12, in June of 2024, we did launch our emergency medical dispatch program. Thank you for the support from this board. And we were able to utilize some opioid funding to see that project through. Shortly after the launch of it, I came back and provided some statistics, some immediate feedback on that. We have continued feedback that that is a very positive thing and that we are providing a higher level of service than we've ever provided. So that was a big thing. Now we get into statistics. This is where I'll probably eat up a little bit of time here. So page 13, this is just an overall view of 2024. So our average answer time on a 911 call is 3.1 seconds. It's pretty quick. It seems like 3 seconds is a long time, but there's a lot of processing that has to happen on the technology side to get to us. There's a lot of hoops that have to be jumped through on the technology side before it gets to us. 911 phone calls are very separate from a traditional, like if I call Katie on my cell phone or call her desk, it's not the same route that it takes, and it's considered a closed loop system. So there's a lot of technology that happens on the back end. August was our busiest month. Combined phone calls, we had 29,000 phone calls. That's a lot, even for Benzie County. 6,388 of those were 911 calls. 66 texts involving 911. Those are inbound and outbound. And then we had 22,780 admin calls. So that's really the number that I am working on trying to bring down. And I'll get into where we're going with that on the next couple of pages. On this page, in the middle of the page, there's a pretty important statement that I'd like to highlight. Since 2012, every month since then, Benzie County Central Dispatch has exceeded the national standard for our answer time. So in the yellow box on that page, 90% of all 911 calls shall be answered within 15 seconds. 95% of all 911 calls should be answered within 20 seconds. So since 2012, 12 years, we have far exceeded that standard. At the bottom of that page, you see what our statistics are. So since 2012, we have answered 98.8% of our 911 calls within 15 seconds. In that same time frame, 12 years, our average answer time was 3.5 seconds. And the number of calls that were evaluated in that were 85,000 calls. So it's a huge data set to review. Next page, just more statistics for 2024. 45% of our calls were medical related. 45% of them were law enforcement related. And then a little under 10% were fire related. The next page, when we look at our 911 calls by class, there's one thing no, this is not the right one. There's another one very similar to this, and I'm going to point out a pretty important statistic that's going to help understand some of the changes that we make. So in 2024, as you can see on this graph, over 5,000 of our 911 calls were cell phones. That makes sense for this day and age. That tracks 100% with the industry across the board and with technology. People aren't keeping their landlines anymore. An important note to make is when we talk about wireline 911, that's very specific to be a copper phone line. It is not VoIP calls. Those are separate, and those are treated separately in our reporting. So in 2024, we only had 270 traditional true landline 911 calls. That's a low number, and that's pretty consistent. Our admin calls, as you can see on the next page here, this pie chart, the important one, which is the smallest sliver in that pie chart, is the green one, admin transfers. I'm focusing on that pretty heavily. What that means is dispatch receives an admin call, non-emergency, and we transferred it to somebody else because we weren't the right people to get the call. That's the number that, in a perfect world, I'd like to see at 0. So we're making some changes internally in our phone system, and when people call us, to make sure they're getting to the right place the first time. That will help reduce some workload on my staff, but it'll also help the citizen get to the right place again the first time. They're not having to be transferred around the campus to get the answer they're looking for. Next page just breaks down our phone calls by the day of the week. It might not be common sense knowledge, but Saturdays and Sundays we see a downtick in our calls. For us, that makes sense. Mondays and Fridays are pretty busy. Again, that also makes sense for us. And we see the same thing happen with our admin calls and our 911 calls. They kind of fluctuate based on day of the week. Next page, we look at calls by hour of the day. Again, just like the previous one, this kind of makes sense. At 2 o'clock in the morning, we're not as busy as 10 o'clock in the morning. That makes sense to us. So the next page is a pretty busy chart. This is the one where I want to point out something that's going to make sense. When we refer back to a couple minutes ago when I was talking about the definition of a wireline 911 call versus VoIP versus cell phone, etc. This is a 5-year data set. So in 2020, we received 805 911 calls on a traditional landline that involved a copper line of some sort coming into a house. In 2024, that number is 270. So the number's going down because people are getting rid of their traditional landlines in their home, and they're converting those, either they're getting rid of them completely or they're converting them to a cell phone or a VoIP phone. So that's really what this chart shows, is we see that increase in call volume based on the class of service. Also in 2020, there was only 93 VoIP 911 calls, which is voice over internet protocol. That's if you have a charter phone in your home and you have a modem connected to it, that's a VoIP phone. There's other versions of it as well. So 93 in 2020, but then in 2024, we had 505. So for ease of number conversation, a 400 phone call increase over 5 years. That tracks, that makes sense for us. The next page here really just highlights the continued statement at the beginning of this statistics conversation that over the past 5 years, we've been able to decrease our average answer time by 0.3 seconds. In 2020, it was 3.4. Last year, it was 3.1. In that time, we've also been able to maintain our percentage of calls answered within 15 and 20 seconds. And that refers to that NENA standard. So we're doing well. The next page really shows how we have decreased our administrative phone calls. Some of that, in all fairness, if we look at the first year of this data set is 2020, I am very confident in saying some of those numbers are COVID numbers. A lot of people were calling dispatch across the state because they weren't sure what to do. They weren't sure who to report to. So it is inflated and we have to take that into account. But as you can see, that number is going down, and that's good. I would say that being able to decrease our admin phone calls is a good thing. And more specifically, trying to decrease our transfers. Next page, and I'm almost done with stats, I promise. Next page, we look at the last 5 years based on our shift times. The yellow being 2020, we see that increase again from the previous data set. We have to acknowledge 2020 involved a lot of COVID phone calls. 2024 being the red line, we see a bit of a decrease, but it's pretty consistent over 5 years with what we did last year. The time of day, our busiest time of day still remains at 11 a.m. I'm not sure what magic happens at 11 o'clock, but 11 o'clock has been our busiest day for years. The next one, which I thought was pretty important to share. I know there's been a lot of conversation about Smart 911, where we're at, what kind of impact we have with it. So I was able to pull some data. Their reporting side isn't great, so this is really the best I could put together for that. But in 2020, the orange line is how many 911 calls we received where somebody had a Smart 911 profile. So in 2020, we had 82. And then in 2024, we had 83. So we're pretty consistent, I would say. The harder statistic to pull is that blue line, which is how many profiles were created in the year. That's very hard for me to pull because they like to give a snapshot data of this is, as of right now, when I pull it, this is how many profiles there are and how many were created. If I pull it the next day, that number changes. So I have to pull my data based on either the day or the month. So it's very hard to create that blue line, but this was the best I could do. So we're still seeing new profiles being created over the years. I would like to see that number go up, but that's part of our education outreach. That's part of what we're trying to do, is to reach out to the public and make sure they're aware that this is available and that it's free, and that it's confidential as well. I know last year that was a question brought up, was, can you access that data? Only when you call 911. We can never search it. We can never go back to it. We have to ask permission to do that through the vendor, and you have to have called 911 in order for us to even do that. So at some point, you would have had to call 911 for us to get that info. We can't just search it like a regular database.
Corey, before you leave that, there's going to be some folks that aren't going to know what Smart 911 is. Can you take a minute or two just to explain it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. So Smart 911 is a program that the county pays for. It is free to the general public. This became a thing, I believe. I'm going to get my timeline wrong. I believe it was 2012, 2013-ish. The state paid for it for the first couple of years. So this was available statewide to all PSAPs. The state picked up the bill for it. Since then, each county has had to pick up that bill. Some have continued it, some have not. We have continued it. There's a lot of value in it, I believe. So what this allows somebody to do is to create a profile that can have their name, their medical information, their home address, any pets they have in the home, any vehicles associated with them. Maybe they're a guardian or a caretaker. They can put that information in there as well. It's really as much as the public wants to share with 911, knowing that we can't ever get that info until you call 911. So the system will look and say, hey, I know this phone number. This phone number has a profile. Show that to the dispatcher. So I have one. I have mine set up to have medical information. I have a daughter that has some chronic medical issues that I would like to share to make sure that that can get to the EMS providers before they get there. You can kind of have that information while they're en route. You can also put in information about what your house looks like. If you live on a dirt road and your driveway's 3 miles long and you don't have a mailbox, you can put that in there so the dispatcher can know and relay that to the responders. Hey, you're not going to find a mailbox. This is the color of the house. This is where the road is. They can put in their utilities. So if there's unfortunate event of a structure fire or something like that, we know who their utility company is. We can make those phone calls sooner. So that's a lot of the value behind Smart 911. And it's not just for Benzie County. If you travel, I don't want to give an example of a specific county because I don't know every county that has it. But just for conversation's sake, if you travel downstate and that county also has Smart 911 and you have a medical emergency and you filled that out, they're going to get that information too. They don't have to call us to get it. They just get it instantly as long as they're, paying for that system. So great question.
Yeah, great.
So that's all of our statistics. Before I get into where we're going, are there any questions on that before I hit the last page?
Go back to page 19. Can you explain relevance of all the different tracking every separate one of these?
Yeah, so here, I accidentally stapled right on the page number, so give me a second to find page 19.
That bar graph,
It's 18.
5 years of 911.
Okay. Oh, yeah, sure. So basically, this is something that is already built into the statewide 911 network. It will determine what type of call it is, and it may have a different route that it takes. That's very technical and way above my understanding. But basically, the point of this is to show how we're receiving our requests for help. The main takeaway I would say across this is that majority are cell phone calls. You know, that's something that's been talked about, but this is physical data showing and proving that that is accurate. And it's also showing that the other ways to reach 911 are continuing to go down, or they're switching roles. That switching role would be the wire line into the house is switching to either cell phone or VoIP. So a wire line, I can get, just go through the definition of them. Wire line is that copper line like I talked about. Wireless is a cell phone in some capacity. VoIP is the voice over internet. Unknown means the system didn't know what it was and it can't classify it correctly. Some of those are also other phone calls that we are combating that is meant more for a private conversation. They're inappropriate calls, not because somebody's abusing the system in our community. It's bad actors abusing the 911 network as a whole. And so that's what some of those are too. And that's why we see that number has gone up over the years. And then text to 911 is just that. For those who don't know, in the entire state of Michigan, every county and every public safety answering point can receive text to 911 now. That was something that changed last year. Detroit was the last to come on board with that. But now, no matter where you are in the state of Michigan, you can text 911. Good question. Any other questions? So the last page here is looking ahead. What are we doing this next year? So staffing continues to be something that we're focused on. Our end goal remains the same, that we should have 2 dispatchers on 24/7, 365. That's an industry standard. That's a safety issue. And that's also, that's also what the community is asking for on the first responder side of things. They want 2 people in dispatch to handle those incidents as they come in, instead of 1 person trying to juggle it all and not able to do everything efficiently. We're going to continue on our continuing education and our continued training. We do have state requirements that we have to meet every year, but we go above and beyond those. I really open it up to my staff to give me suggestions of what they want to see for training. Maybe some active violence specialized training, some mental health specialized training. I really let them provide some ideas on where to go with that. The third one talks about industry standards. We're just going to continue on our path. That's kind of the common theme here of updating our policies, our equipment, our staffing, our processes, all of it to meet industry standards, best practices, but also keep in mind, it's got to make sense for us and our community. Equipment updates and upgrades. We still have some things that we have identified that we need to continue working on to upgrade and update. We're going to work through that in 2025. And the last one I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on because it's later on the agenda, but it is a pretty large project for radio encryption. It is a mandate. It is required. So we're going to deal with that this year. Into any questions on this?
Commissioners? Corey, then I bring this up every year, but for the benefit of the public, talk about how 911 is funded and the disparity in that funding, because some of our local users may be billed into a different area.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll use the same example that I use every time, which is myself. So 911, we have an opportunity, and in Benzie County, we utilize it, called surcharge funding. And we utilize what is legally allowed, the maximum, which is $3 per phone line. And that is billed for cell phones, landlines, any phone line that is billed to an address within Benzie County. So where that loophole comes in would be people that travel out of state, travel out of county, maybe they're seasonal residents, Maybe they don't even live here. They just operate an Airbnb or something like that. Or you have people like myself who don't live in the county. My bill goes to Grand Traverse County because I have a shared phone plan with my whole family. So Grand Traverse gets their share of it for 9 phone lines. Well, I don't live in Grand Traverse County. I should go where I live. So those are some of the challenges that are faced with how that funding is set up. Some of the other challenges come in is that it's based on honesty of those phone providers to report to us truthfully. We do not have a mechanism to audit them, and we do not have any sort of way of knowing that they're telling us the truth. We just have to accept what they provide us.
My commentary on that is that I'll use myself as an example. We're on a family plan.
Mhm.
My son gets the bill and he lives downstate. Our population will swell by 3 times during the course of a tourist season. You're having to respond to those calls, but we don't necessarily have the funding that follows with that in order to respond to those calls. Do you see the day where there are some corrective measures for equitability?
I hope so. I don't have a very educated answer on that one. I do know that in the coming years, that funding mechanism is set to sunset. So it'll be reviewed. And I think Commissioner Markey's brought that up a couple of times that the MAC is looking at that and looking to see how that's working and also how it's not working. There are some counties in northern Michigan that don't use that funding mechanism at all because it doesn't work for them. And there's others who don't charge as much as we do on that surcharge because it's working very well for them. So they have less of a rate they charge. So as far as how to fix that, I'm not sure. I know it's brought up. And it's really going to be up to the state to figure that out based on the feedback they're receiving.
I think as they begin to look at that legislation, we need to be a voice through MAC to address it.
Yeah.
Because it does, when we talk about our funding needs in Benzie County, most of the taxpayers and property owners don't understand why there may be a shortfall in this because of the funding mechanism.
Absolutely. And I
Just
know
wanted
it's
to get it out there.
Yeah, and it's also been talked about. I'm a part of the Michigan Communication Directors Association, long association name. Basically, it's statewide 911 directors, and we meet every other month. And it's something that we've brought up. We have people from all over the state as a part of that group, and some people it works well for them, and some it doesn't. So we do have some maybe influence, I would say lightly, through that group. And we've, I've voiced that, for us, it doesn't work. And here's the proof in the pudding that it doesn't work, at least for us. There needs to be a different option for those counties that it doesn't work well for. We need to have other options.
There an issue with like burner phones too, as far as.
I'm not sure where that ended up. There was a problem with prepaid. And so
Yeah,
that's actually an important thing to point out is this surcharge is post-paid, meaning you're paying it after the service. Prepaid phones, like you can go get from anywhere anymore. I don't know how that is handled. I don't ever see any of that. The state handles it from beginning to end and then distributes it to us. And I do know that they were looking at that because there was a discrepancy. And that's how they found out they don't have a good way to audit. And that there may exist loopholes that are being utilized to get out of it.
Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? If not, we appreciate the report, appreciate the professionalism.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Tom?
Good morning, Tom King, Director of Benzie EMS, Matt Delzio, paramedic with Benzie EMS and one of our coordinators. So as you probably remember, last month we had Mr. Chris Parrish up who gave a little presentation and talked about a couple different topics within the organization. Mr. Delzio wanted to give an annual report on EMS and touch base on a couple projects that are going on. So I'm privileged and proud to see that we have some of our staff being actively engaged in different areas and avenues and projects going on within the EMS division. So turn this over to Matt and he'll be happy to answer any questions about where we're at and where we're headed.
Thanks, Tom. My name's Matt. I am a paramedic with Benzie County. Been here for about 5 years. I am in charge of supply coordinator and vehicle maintenance. So ordering the medical equipment and making sure vehicles are maintained and a little bit involved with the ordering of them as well. So for 2024, we responded to 2,650 calls for service. It's pretty average for us. We've been increasing every year, about 100 calls, 105 calls per year over the past 5 years, and pretty much a steady mix of transfers, lift assists, and we don't have a whole lot of changes in our response. It's pretty much a mix of those. Some progress that we've done this year. We have a clinical contract signed with West Shore Community College. In the past, we've only got paramedics from Traverse City as students that come out to do their ride time, and now we've got some coming out from Manistee. So thanks, Chris Parrish, for pushing that along. When we have these students come up, it's a great thing. We celebrate it. It's good on a lot of fronts that I'll touch on later. And we also, as far as our branding and our fleet maintenance and having a matching fleet, we currently have 5 ambulances in Benzie County. We have for quite a while, and even to this day, it's a little better than it used to be. But those ambulances were completely mismatched. We had one that was a big old diesel. We had one that looked like it was a mid-Michigan truck. It was yellow and, the paint was coming off of it. We now have 3 trucks out of those 5 ambulances that are completely matching. And those are the primary ones that we try to run. So, it makes it, it not only looks better when we have a matching fleet of trucks, but it also is easier and less expensive on maintenance. For instance, an LED light, windshield wipers, air filters, I can stock those and we can get those replaced, and our mechanic can kind of predict how many hubcaps and how many, brake rotors and all those things that we need, and we can get those fixed, less expensive and more expeditiously. We have another ambulance that we're going to take delivery of this summer, and another one that is budgeted for this year that I believe is being passed through the various meetings this month. So that will be the 5th matching truck in our fleet. So then we'll have 5 ambulances that match completely. Right now we have 2 that are slightly different. Most people probably don't know the difference, but they are slightly different in chassis, slight differences in chassis and motors. So that's exciting. We also have new uniforms ordered. You can stay on that slide, Katie. That's fine. We have new uniforms ordered. Nate, who's in the back there, got those, and everyone's displaying them proudly. Our new uniforms and branding. So it keeps us looking good because our uniforms do get tore up. We wash them a lot. We have to. We'll go into detail on why, but they do look pretty rough. And every couple of years, we like to freshen them up a little bit and make sure we look good to the general public. So some attention areas, like any business, staffing is always a challenge. We have 3 full-time openings right now. In the past in the past year, we've lost 5 full-time paramedics. I don't know the exact number, but I think we have about 15 full-time employees, that work shifts. So to lose 5 is a significant amount. 1 retired, 2 went to nursing school, and 2 went to Long Lake Fire Rescue's paramedics. So of those 5, we've hired 2. So that's progress, but that still is not a very good trajectory over time. We are still optimistic. We have 1 hopefully paramedic that we're going to recruit. And we just had our new union contract signed. We were hoping that would get us a little more traction. But it hasn't given us the applicants that we thought that would come in. So that is a challenge. We're not turning our backs to it, and we are constantly trying to recruit good paramedics or hire EMTs that have the potential to be paramedics and go to paramedic school. Our MMR clinical contract, this is low hanging fruit, but it is something that needs to get done. I know Katie's working on it right now. What it means a lot to have students. And this is the program in Traverse City. For those who don't know, Mobile Medical Response puts on a class up in Traverse City. We currently, the class starts, I think in April is when it's supposed to start, a month or two. And we currently don't have a clinical contract with them. So we got a couple months, but it's very important that their students are able to work out here. It gives them exposure. And it also to, our medics that have been here for, 5, 10, 30 years, it reinforces their learning process of, watch one, do one, teach one. And it gives them that mastery level of skill that they need. And it gives that youthfulness and that, it kind of breaks up the mundane. So it's helpful on a lot of fronts. So I hope that we can push these two attorneys to find a compromise and, just making them, keeping them, at the table and making sure that they know that inaction is not an option. This next slide here, half the data obviously is projected 2025 and further. The other half is actual numbers. These are our calls for service. Towards 2018, 2019, we were around 2,000. As you can see, in 2028, we're going to hit 3,000 calls. It's just going to happen, and that is that's kind of at the point where we're going to need to staff another full-time ambulance. As some of you know, right now we have 2 ambulances staffed 24/7 all the time. 100% of the time we have 2 ambulances staffed, one behind Jody's Bar out in Thompsonville Highway, US 31, and the other one in Frankfurt. We occasionally, I'd say maybe half the time, have a ambulance staff from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Sometimes we don't have one at all. Sometimes we have a full ambulance. Sometimes we just have one paramedic that can respond to Elmira or Thompsonville. So the difference is we would really need to have by 2028, we really need to have a third full-time ambulance to responsibly respond to the calls that we're going to be taking in Benzie County. Go to the next one. And you can say, okay, well, Matt, how do you know this? Well, you can argue that right now we really should have a third. We really should be staffing more ambulances in this county. Green Lake responded into Benzie County 37 times last year. That's just unacceptable. I mean, on a lot of levels. If you're a Green Lake resident, you don't want your ambulance coming into Benzie County. And they responded into Benzie County because we were at status 0. We did not have an ambulance to provide to that resident. It's not reciprocated. We don't go to Green Lake. They don't call us. If they called us, we'd love to go out there and help them. But it's just a kind of a geographical issue. And also with Grand Traverse, they have a lot more options in Benzie County. You have Long Lake. Blair has 3 ambulances that they staff, almost regularly during the day. And so they have a lot more options, and they have also 2 ambulances at Green Lake. So I would love if it was reciprocated. That would make us feel a little better. It still wouldn't change the response time that the resident is feeling, but we do need to change something before we have an issue with our neighbors who are being great neighbors right now. And so that obviously that solution is to get a third full-time truck staffed 24/7. Station 3, I know there's a lot of progress on this, but I just want to make sure that I speak with you guys directly to keep this moving. Station 3, is unacceptable. If anybody wants me to prove that to them, the general public or or any commissioners, Station 3 is our station in Frankfurt. It frankly is just deplorable. And I know that we're all, we're looking for a permanent, immediate, affordable solution. I believe that one has been presented, and if we could take swift action on that and keep this momentum up, that would certainly be appreciated. Going back to recruiting, when we take a brand new person to Benzie County and they're like, okay, why should I, I'm at Kalkaska, I'm at Masaki, why should I leave, this station? I say, well, okay, come on over, you can see us. And then I have to take them to Station 3 and show them that. I mean, I remember when I first started and they said, yeah, come out to Station 3. I was a student and I was like, oh my God. I mean, it's rough. If that's your first impression, that's like taking somebody to meet your mother on the first date. That is not a very good idea. So anyway, I know this has been talked about a lot, but we really need, I feel like the solution that has been presented is great, and we just need to move forward with it as fast as we can.
Matt, just for information.
Yeah.
We have elevated it to a very high priority, and the administrator will be talking about where we're currently at on that during her report.
Okay, outstanding. Thank you. So just to recap, our goals, attract quality full-time employees every way we can. Again, the permanent solution for Station 3. And then planning on where we're going to house this third ambulance that's going to be staffed 24/7, where that's physically going to go. I know in the past with Benzie EMS, we haven't really thought ahead. We just haven't really gotten a 10, 20-year plan that I've ever seen. We're kind of dealing with stuff that we should have dealt with, 5, 10 years ago, which is fine. But, we need to, in my opinion, when we need to look at something, I want to build, actually. Katie can tell you, I want to build, I don't have the funding, by the way, but I want to build a station, a centrally located station somewhere close to where I'm standing right now that can house and, not only a third ambulance in the next 3 to 5 years, but also a fourth and, with plans for a fifth in 10 to 20 years. I think that's just a responsible thing to do, because it's an inevitable thing that's going to happen in this area. So, and lastly, I want to thank you. What's that?
Can I just interject real quick?
Yes, absolutely.
There was some confusion that Tom cleared up for me, and I think it might be helpful to the community. When you talk about 2 fully staffed stations and the need for a third down the road, but Frankfurt is called Station 3,
Yeah.
that creates confusion. So
Yes.
Station 1 is actually the county campus, right?
Correct.
And
Yeah.
then Station 2 is 669 and Station 3 is Frankfurt,
Yes.
but there's only 2. I just wanted to clear that up because it does create the idea that there are 3 stations.
Yeah.
Why would we need a third?
Yes. Correct. We only have 2. I don't know what,
Okay.
they've been named that for a long time. We just keep going with it because we don't want to change it. But yes, there is no Station 1. We technically want to build a Station 1 to have 3 full-time ambulances, in this county.
Thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah. And I want to thank you guys for your support. I wouldn't be here on my day off talking to you guys if I didn't feel like that, what I'm saying isn't, landing on deaf ears. So, and I speak for the union and everyone. We do feel very supported by the community, by the board. And, just want to say thank you. Really, thank you for your support. You guys, we appreciate it. Do you have any questions?
Please.
Yes, so it sounds like you're talking about projected models that it's inevitable that calls are going to go up, and I suspect that has to do with our aging population. All of our demographics say that we are shifting that way. So I understand that. And then some barriers to your staffing. It sounds like you are working to recruit students. It sounds like Station 3 might be a barrier. Are there any other barriers you can think of? Those are 2 big barriers, I understand, but.
Sure. It's a great question. When when you look at staffing, whether that's a paramedic or any other profession, you can change a couple of things. You can change the location of where they work. You can change their working conditions, and you can change their compensation. We can't change the location. I can't have somebody work remote in, Detroit for this position, so we can eliminate that one. Their working conditions we can change, which is what you talked about, we had this Taj Mahal of a fire or of an EMS station, then, that might recruit some people. And then you go over to compensation and, those out of those 5, employees that we lost, 3 of them were, in that did not have a pension, a defined benefit pension. We have seen a high turnover in that about half of our full-time employees have a pension. The other half don't. We're way more likely to lose. We're going to constantly churn those employees that don't have a pension and retire out the ones that do. For obvious reasons, I know it's expensive, but it's just something to point out. Our new healthcare is more expensive. It's just tangibly more expensive. I'm not saying it's worse. I'm not saying anything like that. But when you look at the numbers, it's just it's not as much of a recruiting tool as our previous plans have been. We did get a significant pay bump, and we appreciate that. I'm not up here asking for a increased compensation for Matt Delzio. I am just stating that we have, in my opinion, an issue with recruiting talented people. And the thing that I don't want to do is lower our standards. I want us to have high standards and recruit good people mainly because I have to live with them 2 days a week. I mean, that's right. Any other questions?
The other thing I'd like to point out too is we're up against this battle of there's a shortage of paramedics and EMTs across the state and further. And so we're making strides and we're trying and we're constantly thinking of creative ways, but we're just in this weird world where people don't want to be a paramedic or they don't want to be an EMT. They don't want to be a police officer. We are in this weird time in our world.
Yeah, you identified the need, probably. We're projecting the need for a 3rd station down the road. Geographically, where does that make the most sense based on your number of calls?
Like right about. I haven't looked at a data plot. That'd be more a question for Corey or somebody who knows information a lot more. My guess is it's right where we're standing right now, just somewhere centrally located, in the county that can respond to both areas.
Statistically, in the county, the vast majority of our calls are responded to by Benzoni and Frankfurt fire departments. So that tells you right there.
The other thing you have to look at is, we want close access to 31. That's where we run, if we're off 31, we're just coming back down to 31 every single time. So to have our main station as close to US 31 as possible is, going to be the direction of travel for most of our calls.
Just for clarification too, in case anybody's listening, there is a retirement plan for EMS. It's just not a defined benefit. It's a defined contribution,
Correct.
which could have adjustments made. I think Chris has offered input on that, which was heard.
Then for the final comment for the public's benefit, the growth in our community in the last measurement, 25% came from 60+ years old.
Yeah.
So if there's a question about what the demand's going to be, it speaks for itself.
Business is good. Yes.
Matt, we appreciate the presentation this morning.
Yep. Thank you.
Anything else to be said, Tom?
I just thank Matt for putting this together and presenting all this information for you. I'll just kind of review again. From back there.
We can, but
right, but the public can't. So I just want to, I'll give a little capstone on Matt. One of the things you pointed out, Commissioner Trigg, about hurdles that we're facing, and one of the things was brought up was wages, and we did make huge strides in wages this contract negotiation. And unfortunately, so did all the other agencies and fire departments out there. So when we thought we were kind of coming up, they were coming up. So we're still kind of like, we're not behind the 8 ball when it comes to wages, but it's like comparing wages and benefits and where are we at and how do we draw people? Because everybody in this region is drawing from the same pool of people. And it's like, who can offer that extra, whatever it's gonna take to draw those people over? You're robbing Peter to pay Paul essentially between all the different fire departments and ambulance services throughout the region. And I'm assuming that's going to be statewide and throughout the entire country. And yes, as Katie pointed out, there is a shortage of paramedics that hasn't changed in the last 5+ years. It just continues to grow. And what's going to be done to fix that problem, I have not a clue. But I know at state and federal levels, they're kind of working on that, trying to make these careers a little more attractive. Other thing I want to point out is, when's the last time you saw a group of EMS personnel standing in this office or building? 5 years ago, I fought tooth and nail to try to get more buy-in from our staff, to get them come to some of these meetings, be present, be there. And within the last couple of years, you've started to see some changes. We have more people that want to take on small projects on themselves. Matt did this. I didn't do it. He did it. Our new uniform designs for shirts and that was done by Nate. He wanted to do it. He took that on. He's been working directly with Katie on the new building project, taking some of those burdens off of my shoulders, putting them on their own shoulders and following through on them. And I think that's absolutely commendable. And so all our staff is doing a fantastic job, and they're working hard, and our call volumes are going up, and they're working a lot of overtime, and we need to figure out how to get a few more people in here that we're working on, so they don't have to work quite so many hours, and I think they'd appreciate that. And unless anybody has any questions, that's all I've got.
Tom, I'm just gonna tell you that it takes a real leader to understand when somebody else should be leading. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Bert, can you get this done in about 5-6 minutes?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Good morning. That's the first time I've ever had somebody say, hurry up. So,
But we want to give you all the time, because we're gonna have to pause you at some point. We got
No.
a 10 o'clock commitment.
we're good. All right, so I'm assuming everybody has their quarterly report. So if you go to the second page, it's going to give you a breakdown of number of building permits and electrical permits, mechanical, plumbing, and soil erosion permits that were issued in the fourth quarter. So I won't necessarily go over all those unless somebody has a question on that page. So if you go 2 more pages, well, you can look at the bar graph. It's nice and pretty, and it does tell a story if you want to look at it long enough. But if you go to the next page, we have the history of issued building permits. And what you'll see is the numbers for the entire year, starting in 2020 all the way to 2024. So really, this could be actually called your annual report rather than your quarterly report, right? But just for comparison, in 2023 for the fourth quarter, we had 87 building permits, and in 2024 we had 99. So for the last quarter, we were up 8 permits for the last quarter. If you take a look at the number for the entire year, we were 447 for 2024 and 439 for 2023. So slightly down. And then if you take a look at 2022, we're down from there. I don't necessarily see that the 447 number being anything alarming. I think it's probably pretty normal. A normal number. Getting back to the 487 we had in 2021 and the 461 in 2022, I think a lot of those permits were because people were just waiting to do their projects after COVID mostly. So I don't see 447 as being, this terrible number that's low, if you will. Another thing to report is on April 30th, we're going to be getting a new code, the 2021 Michigan Building Code. currently we're under the 2015. I'm gonna try really hard not to throw anybody under the bus, but the state just took so long to put. First of all, these codes are published every 3 years, so we're not gonna see a 2018 code because they skipped it. Because they took so long to get it all the way through the legislation process and start to get something adopted. So we're gonna have a 2021, we're skipping the 18 on April 30th. We're still operating under the 2015 Michigan Residential Code. It's anybody's guess when something might happen with that. Stay tuned, that's the best I got for that one. Any questions on what I've said so far?
I just want to echo something you said. In 21, 22, it clearly was people that had been waiting on the sidelines. That's an anomaly.
Mhm.
It's not that there's less interest. In fact, a report that I saw out of the newspaper in the past couple of months, that Benzie County, based on population, had the 5th largest number of requests for building permits. I think I shared that with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Any questions on the report?
Anything for Bert? Guess you got it all covered for us.
So one more thing, who I brought with me today, of course, everybody knows Jim Zimmerman, our building inspector, and person next to him is Nick Keck. Nick's also our building inspector, one of our building inspectors. I don't know if any of you have noticed that my hair is a bit grayer than it might have once was. What little bit of hair I have. So Nick is going to be the new owner of our company. Okay. He's also going to be a building official as soon as I can get around to creating a document. I'm not going anywhere, by the way. I don't know how to, I don't think I can ever stop doing what I do. Just like doing what I do. So I'm not going anywhere, but Dick's been with us for how long? You been with us? Going on 6 years now, working out of one of our offices downstate. Has been virtually doing all the building official type work that a building official would do, amongst other things, doing his job as a building inspector, also doing zoning administration in the locations where we do zoning. So he's very well qualified to do the building official job. I guess once I decide that I really am going to leave, but I'm not going anywhere yet.
Think your last name again?
So you may see him give the next quarterly report, just so I can see how he does.
Or could you say, and I've asked this each time you do a presentation, and each one of the commissioners get your presentation electronically. We have some townships that like to get this and allows us then to forward it on to them.
It's in the packet.
It's in the packet.
Yeah, I know, but I can't break it out of the packet. I'd have to send the whole packet.
I'm going to show you how to do it.
No, I'm asking, I've asked the building department for 3 years to get that.
Let me get with Katie. I'm wondering if there's an email tree that I can just send it out on that, right?
That's fine.
Yeah.
I just know that I get requests from the communities that I represent. And it's just easier for me to, it's easier for you not to have to print it for me, even. It just lets me send it out.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Did I make it? Did I make the time?
You did good. I really appreciate that. Any other questions for Bert before he excuses himself? Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have a 10 o'clock closed session, right? And you have some language that allows us to move into that closed session?
It's on the memo in the packet.
I'll make the motion that the Board of Commissioners enter into closed session to discuss strategy and settlement with the legal counsel in connection with McCall Jr. versus Benzie County et al. As authorized by MCL 15.268, paragraph E, and that the county administrator and sheriff be invited into closed session.
I'll support Markey.
Questions, comments? You gotta have to do that by roll call?
Yep. Markey,
Yes.
Sky,
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Briggs,
Yes.
Janat,
Yes.
motion carried.
Oh, no, you're not.
We're trying to be back in open
There
session.
you go. Now you're unmuted.
All right. Now we're back in open session. We have a guest here, the new executive director.
Don't we have,
You have to take action.
we have an action?
Oh, we have to
take?
take action on this
Yeah.
one now?
Yeah.
Okay, please do.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that the Board of Commissioners authorizes council to proceed as discussed in closed session.
Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Nye,
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Brigg,
Yes.
Janat,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right, let me try this again. Under department head reports, we've got the new executive director for senior resources with us.
Good morning, everyone, and I am very pleased to be able to meet you and be part of this county now and be able to serve Benzie Senior Resources and obviously the burgeoning 60-plus population that we're going to be hoping to support well in the coming years. I just wanted to give you a brief background, not take up too much of your time because I know you have got quite the full agenda. But I have been based in Michigan my whole life. I had recently had an opportunity for about a year and a half to be in Montana and working remote, and then came back to Benzie and Honor specifically, and was really pleased to be able to be identified as the new executive director for Benzie Senior Resources and following the footsteps of Doug Duran. I have been involved in nonprofit management for over 30 years, and specifically I've been involved with older adult services at this local, regional, state, and federal level. And so I'm bringing that experience with me to Benzie. I also had the good fortune of working with an organization called 4 Points out of Grand Haven, Michigan for about 8 to 9 years. And that is a sister agency to Benzie. So I was actually here having lunch about 10 years ago and then sharing information with Doug. As an organization at 4 Points, we went from being in the lower level of a community center and grew to be able to serve over 1,200 people actually in the senior center itself and 2,000 people with human services. And we went through a capital campaign and went through the growth that's necessary to best serve those that wanted our services. And so I'm looking forward to bringing all that to the table. I'm not going to do the formal report that I know Doug did. I will at the 4th and bring some numbers with me. I've been doing this for a week, so I am immersed in learning particularly about the team. I'm going to spend the first month really being close to the team and working with them and getting their trust and finding out, what can be in following the steps of Doug. I did get the opportunity the Friday before I began to participate. We received a grant from the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians for $20,000, and that will go towards the purchase of another van to go into our fleet for home delivered meals. We have been particularly challenged with the snow and the amount of snow that has fallen, so that we have the ability to have a snowplow contract for our home delivered meals and those that are isolated and homebound. And that needs to work hand in hand with home delivered meals. So not only the older adults get their meals, but also it is safe for the volunteers so that they don't get stuck and we're unable to do the delivery. So we've been looking at that process this week to make sure that we can make it as seamless as possible in the event of any emergency. We do phone calls, reassurance phone calls if anything comes up. And to the credit of Michelle, who manages our home delivered meals, in advance, she, particularly with the amount of snowfall we've received, got cold meals, frozen meals, and shelf stable meals out to the home delivered clients so that if we have a day where we had to stop or we could not deliver meals, they are still have something in their home to be able to have that particular day. And it hasn't been 2 days in a row yet at all. So yeah, just briefly wanted to share who I am. And I really look forward to working with you. I'm going to get a chance to meet Katie and Art next week. And as I said, I welcome learning more about Benzie specifically. I'm not a stranger to this area, but I am so happy to be living in this area. So, and happy to entertain any questions you might have at this time.
I can't remember very well. Can you state your full-
Absolutely. Bridget Hassig.
Any other comments or questions?
right?
Well, you'll have plenty of chances to get in front of us as you choose.
Mhm.
We look forward to working with you and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks, Art. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Any other department heads or elected officials? If not, we'll move into the finance report.
Good morning, Kelly Long, County Treasurer. So we have payables January 30th of 2025 through February 6th of 2025 in the amount of $434,613.95.
Move to pay a bill.
Mark, you will support.
Questions, comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Sauer,
Yes.
Craig,
Yes.
Janat,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
I,
Yes.
motion carried.
Anything else for us? Skating today, aren't you? Good for you. Under new business, I'd like to invite up the group from Point Betsy. Ed?
Thank you. I'm Ed Hookturf with the Point Betsy Shoreline Committee. We're, as you know, we're in about the fourth year of changing designs for this project. We have a new design that we hope will satisfy Eagle, and we'd like your support to submit this for new permits by the end of this month. And Peter Hink, our engineer, is here to explain what's changed and why it's changed, and then we'll take any questions that you may have.
Great.
Peter?
Thanks, Road Commission folks, for letting us jump in line here. But again, I'm Peter Hink. I'm with Bar Engineering. I'm a project manager for this project, and I live in Traverse City. I've been pleased to help out with the project for the Point Betsy Shoreline for the last several years. Just a brief update of what we're talking about here today is that, as Ed said, the status on our project and the characteristics of this revised design and what we expect going forward. And again, hoping that this is something that the county can support. So as you likely know, the shoreline protection system, or the SPS for the Point Betsy Lighthouse, is in pretty bad shape. Most of it has been in place for 60 to 80 years. There's a lot of concrete cracking, a lot of safety concerns, and a lot of pieces that are failing and need repair or replacement. And so the Friends of the Lighthouse back in 2020 began the process of designing reconstruction. Go to the next slide. They started that process with commissioning a historic structures report that was finalized in 2021. And that kind of laid the framework for potential alternatives for the design, and a lot of discussion with the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO. And at that point, we were engaged as part of the design team to take the project to full design and permitting and eventually construction. It's been a several year process going through data collection, having pre-application meetings with Eagle, and a lot of consultation with SHPO and also the neighbors of the project. As shown on the slide here, we submitted our first permit application almost 2 years ago in 2023, and did put the project out to bid that year, but were unable to award due to receiving only one bid at that time. And subsequent to the bidding, we still did not have a permit from Eagle, and there were concerns that were raised by the Eagle Great Lakes permitting reviewers that required some plan modifications and quite a bit of discussion with the committee and with the engineering team. And that first permit application was eventually withdrawn in the spring of 24, when Eagle indicated that they could not issue a permit for that. And rather than accepting a denial, we decided to withdraw and continue to work on finding a solution with them. Have a second permit application that's in front of Eagle right now that they've continued to express some concerns about. And as shown on the slide here, the key comments that they have made critical of the proposed design is really the magnitude of that armoring and the extension of the rock that's being proposed out into the lake. It is much less in this stage than was previously proposed and was previously discussed in the shoreline, or in the historic structures report, and the consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office. But the Great Lakes Bottomlands folks at Eagle have indicated that They still see what was proposed as being too much extension into the Great Lakes bottomlands. You can go back just 1 second there. There's also ongoing permitting with the Army Corps. That process is paused while we wait for outcome or resolution with Eagle. And then as part of the Army Corps process, there will need to be additional review by the State Historic Preservation Office. Because of the changes that we've made to the design at this point, we do expect that we will be in the category of an adverse effect on the historic structure of the shoreline protection system, not the lighthouse itself. And that will require development of a mitigation plan so that those structures can be properly documented and represented to the public once they are removed. Now, so I know I sent some drawings of what the revised design is that we are going to be discussing with Eagle later this week. And if all goes well, moving towards a revised permit application by the end of the month here. What we have in cross section there, in front of the lighthouse and in front of the concrete apron, would be calling for full removal of the groins that stick out into the lake perpendicular to the structure, and also the existing double crib wall structure with the rock fill. We'd be removing and replacing the concrete apron in about the same footprint with a steel sheet pile wall at the edge that's shown with the vertical red line in the figure there. And then really the point of contention with Eagle has been the extension of that armor stone in front of the wall. We've reduced the footprint there, done some additional modeling that I'll show in a minute here to show that still works from a shoreline protection standpoint and from a protection of the lighthouse standpoint, while being, as we feel is kind of the smallest kind of footprint that we can accommodate there. In comparison to the previous design and the design that was evaluated originally in the historic structures report, this does have to require the removal of those existing crib wall structures, which is what's going to trigger that adverse effect process with SHPO, that we can't leave those existing structures in place. And as I said, it does have a much smaller footprint of extension into the lake. Go to the next one. Away from the lighthouse, so on the north and south end of the lighthouse, and I'll show a plan view drawing on the next slide, there will not be in this plan any metal, any sheet pile or seawalls. It would all be a rock revetment, both to the north and south of the lighthouse, that would wrap around the point there and provide the additional protection. Again, that would require removal of the existing crib wall and the existing steel walls that wrap around the structure, and replace them with a armor stone wall, armor stone revetment made up of pretty large armor stones, about 4.5 foot diameter blocks to withstand the lake forces in the high water events. So this is what the overall plan view would look like viewed from above. So again, the gray area, the concrete apron would be in about the same size and configuration as it is currently, would shorten a little bit on the lake side, would have a vertical wall on the lake side of that concrete apron, and then the rest of what's shown there in the light brown color would all be stone wrapping around the point to provide the protection, not just for the lighthouse, but also for the fog signal building to the north and some of the other structures that are around there. Again, we feel like this is meeting the requests of Eagle to reduce the footprint and stay within a 15-foot boundary from the existing structures and not extend farther into the lake. And we have a meeting scheduled with them for Thursday this week to discuss this and any final comments that they have before we move towards a resubmittal. This image shows a rendering of what the revised system would look like from the beach on the south. Again, so the top image is the existing that photo taken a few years ago now. And then the bottom image would be the new design. So removal of those steel walls that stick out into the lake. There would still be that seawall in front of the lighthouse, but from this vantage point, it would be just barely visible, kind of poking over the top of the stone there. And then mostly what would be visible is the stone revetment from the south. I think if you click again, let's start the video. There you go. So for this, to support this revised design, we've done some additional detailed modeling. This takes a few seconds to really spin up here, but you can see that as the waves come up, this is simulating a pretty high water level condition, similar to what was observed back in 2020 in the highest water levels, and a pretty significant wave event on top of that high water level. So you see that there would still be overtopping of that seawall, and in this image, the lighthouse would be positioned at the far right side of the gray box where the word lighthouse is. So there would still be some overtopping of the seawall and some conditions where waves would run up towards the lighthouse. But the resulting energy hitting the lighthouse would be much, much lower than it is today. And this would provide, according to our modeling and calculations, good protection of the lighthouse for those really big events. Go ahead to the next one. So the implications of this change compared to the previous designs that we've had, we are looking at a slightly lower water level than was evaluated previously, based on some updated analysis of the likelihood of that event occurring. We believe that is still a protective event, but it's, as I said, it's similar to the all-time high water level that was observed back in 2020. It does slightly increase the amount of water overtopping that wall and reaching the lighthouse, but it is still significantly improved from the existing condition. And really what's causing the structure to fail in the existing condition is not so much the amount of overtopping or the energy that's hitting the lighthouse, it's the undermining of the structure and the washing away of the sand from underneath the concrete. We are left with about a 9-foot vertical seawall in front of the lighthouse, but that wall does extend above the apron, above the concrete on the lighthouse side, so that anyone standing on that concrete would have a 3.5-foot steel wall in front of them, so it wouldn't be a vertical drop right there that would be easily fallen over without climbing over the wall. And the one potential area that we still feel like we might need to have some additional discussion with Eagle is the size of that armor stone. As I mentioned, what we're showing in the calculations right now is about a 4.5-foot diameter armor stone to withstand those wave events. That is larger than some of the typical or kind of minor permits that Eagle writes for a lot of the Great Lakes shoreline projects. They like to keep that stone to a 4-foot diameter. And that's something that we want to discuss with them on Thursday at our meeting. We feel like we have some pretty strong engineering justification for having the larger stone. If there is a need for compromise and for reducing the size of the stone to satisfy Eagle, the result of that would be an indication that in a big storm event, we'd expect that some percentage of that stone material would be dislodged and potentially, dislocated down the slope and would eventually need maintenance or replacement. And that's something that is seen at other locations. I know Army Corps at Frankfurt Harbor has had to reposition armor stone on some of their breakwaters as well. Go to the next one. So in terms of where we are in the schedule and how this is affecting our overall project timeline, as I indicated, we're hopeful that we can have this revised submittal to Eagle here by the end of the month, and that they would be considering it in March and hopefully issuing a permit in March or April. We do expect that permit is going to require some conditions that Benzie County as the permittee would need to agree to in order for the permit to be issued. Typically what Eagle does is they issue those permits as a draft permit for the permittee to review and indicate whether they'll accept those conditions. We expect that the conditions in this case would mostly be associated with restoration and plantings and monitoring for the invasive species and that sort of thing on the dune parts of the system rather than on the concrete or the stone. We also have the Army Corps permitting that needs to move forward. That will be unpaused as soon as we have resolution with Eagle. And then also that will then forward the historic structures report or historic structures section 106 application to the State Historic Preservation Office for their consideration and development of that adverse effects mitigation plan, which, as I said, is likely to be primarily a photographic documentation of the systems that are there before they are disturbed. And we are hopeful that that process then can lead us to preparation of a revised bid package yet this spring. We have a few other engineering steps that need to happen before that. But then the project can be put out to bid this spring, May or June. And then once we have a bid in hand, can finalize the fundraising with an eye towards construction next summer. I think that is it. I know that was a lot of information pretty quickly here, but again, if there's any questions or other information that would be helpful, I'd be happy to take them.
Apron.
Mhm.
It was 4 foot, 3 foot or something. Right up by the water. Is that accessible to the public, or is that gonna be? Nobody can walk in front of that?
The apron is not intended to be publicly accessible, and it is not, there are gates in the fences that are locked there, and it's not an area where people are encouraged to go. Thank you. But we also, as part of the consultation with the Shoreline Preservation Committee, have not put barriers or fences around there. Okay.
Yeah, we understand that people will walk on there. Think of it like a pier with a sign, say, don't walk on here, and there's 1,000 people out. So people will walk out there, and what Peter was explaining about that vertical wall is that extends up above the apron and functions as a barrier or railing. So that people can still get on the apron as they do now, but there'll be a railing in effect, keep them from falling over.
We will put up signage to deter them if we can.
Yeah.
That's where we're going.
And the whether they can walk on the stones below that depends entirely on the water level. Today's water level, they probably could.
Mhm.
At 2020 water level, they.
All right, thank you. Quite that bad, but.
All right.
We've got a question here.
Yeah. What is the expected life of this break wall or this erosion prevention?
As we're designing it with the larger armor stone, we're intending it to have a 50-year design life.
Okay.
For all the structural components and the armor stone components. If we are needing to compromise with Eagle on that stone size, that's where the additional maintenance considerations would come into effect. But the structural components, the concrete, the steel, would still be designed for the 50 years.
Okay, because if I recall correctly, the original project was a much longer time frame. The one that Eagle was not happy with.
I think we've always been targeting about 50 years for the structural components.
Okay.
We were looking at a much larger design event there.
I asked the first engineer there 5 years. Kind of backed off of that. 50 to 5.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, the timeline of getting permissible or getting the permits from Eagle, is the grant in jeopardy? Or are we along the timeline of still receiving the significant federal grant that we did? And if that grant is still received, what's the financing gap?
It's a state grant and I don't.
Oh, state grant.
Yeah, we don't know. That's why we want to have bids, so we know how much more money we need. That grant at this point is good in 2026. So that's what we're working on toward doing the work in 2020. The assumption is that we're probably a couple $1 million. But, we don't know how much costs have gone up or down. And this, the major cost in this is the stone. And so using less stone, but we're 4 years later of inflation. When we get a permit, these guys will be able to make a real estimate of the cost. Our assumption is, and kind of has been from the beginning, that we have 6 million and we need it. But that's obviously round number. But that's what we're thinking. And that's the other reason that we need to get this moving, because that fundraising has to be done this summer. And we have to have a figure so we know what we're raising. The people who can help us raise that kind of money tend to be around in the summer. So we're working on a number of deadlines, and that's one of them. We have to have estimate of price, bid, and then raise that money by the end of this summer so they get working as soon as the price is on.
Other questions?
You know, I'm seeing this and you're working with, you know, a ton of agencies, at least 3, trying to appease everybody. I can imagine the hard work, the dedication, the long suffering hours. I really appreciate that. Thank you. And so I know, especially, I mean, the whole team, I'm sure, has been working diligently on that. And maybe my question is a cart before the horse, but assuming we are constructing, would we have to shut down the beach for construction?
What we have laid out in the drawings would allow for a controlled beach access that the contractor would be responsible for managing and providing a safe route to the beach south of the lighthouse where it's still on Benzie County property. I think the bigger challenge is probably going to be parking. That construction activities and contractor, staging needs and whatnot would occupy a good portion of the shoulders of the road at the end there. So there would be very limited parking, I think, along Point Betsy Road. And that's one of the concerns that the local neighbors have raised most consistently.
And of course, we should remember that there is a project called Design to repair that road. That was put on hold 5 years ago because we didn't want to put that in and then run all this equipment up the road. And so there will be disruption, but the beach should.
Other questions or comments? They can make the motion.
Sure. I move that the Board of Commissioners reaffirm to support for the Point Betsy Shoreline Protection Project System project.
Mark, you will support.
We have a motion and support. Additional comments or questions? Hearing none? No?
Craig,
Yes.
Janat,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
motion carried.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks so much.
We invite the road commission. I get to jump up here, huh?
There you are.
My name is Bob Rosa. I'm one of the 3-member board at the Road Commission. As you know, last year we didn't get our our millage approved for our building. So we're coming back and trying to get you guys blessing. I don't expect it. Excuse me. I don't expect it today. We don't expect it today. We're just trying to give you a heads up of what we're thinking. And knowing that there's no elections this year, we would like to have it maybe towards the end of this year because we still got to get some information. We want to review it, have our engineers give us an idea of what's going to cost for the next building. And the other, where was my other thing I got to cover here is lost it.
While you're thinking about it, Bob.
Well, the other thing was the inflation part of it is the reason we would be willing to pay for the cost of the election, which is from what we've found out is somewhere between $70,000 to $80,000 to have the countywide election. But the cost to wait another year to have it when there's another election in 26, the cost of the building would be $1 million, $500,000 more because of inflation. We got a lot of people here. If you got any questions, we can maybe answer them.
We've had this request in front of us before, and we have supported moving it forward. We're not looking for action today, but is there any comments or questions for Bob?
Even if they could get it on this year's ballot, it wouldn't go into effect until following year, if I understand it correctly. Basically, by the time it would be levied to the community, Maples bond would pay off. Hey, that's a plus.
Oh. Let's do the math on that first. Okay. So when is the first time it appear on the tax statement?
This is Troy, he's our manager.
Right.
So if we went for an election in November, we would still have to do RFPs for project manager with Katie. Find out who we were gonna have run this project. We'd also have to do RFPs for final design, which can take up to 6 months to do. And then we'd have to bid it out and get the numbers back. So we wouldn't have I guess we wouldn't have to levy it till 26. If everything goes right. If it takes longer than that, it may be on 27.
So 20 next year.
End of next year. So if we went for an election the end of this year, this would still take almost a year to get everything back that we needed, as far as numbers and project cost and bid design, all that.
Does that mean it'd be on the tax bill of February 2027?
Sounds correct to me.
Most likely, they still have.
Maybe. And there's a timing with when they can sell the bonds as well.
So the math works on that is February of 2027 is when it would be due.
It'd be tight based on the way Bobby explained with how the bonds are sold. It's typically within the timeline to get it onto that winter tax bill. So then it's due February of 27, but it's a very tight time turnaround.
So that would be the earliest that it could go on.
Mm-hmm.
And when does the Maples bond, get paid off?
29.
29. So there would be some overlap.
Like Bob was saying, he kind of touched on it there, $18 million facility. Every year we wait, if the increase is minimal at a 3% increase is $540,000 per year that we're increasing.
My comments aren't to judge it. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that there is overlap by a couple of years on this. Any other questions or comments, Rhonda?
Yeah, so I understand correctly, you need this board's approval to hold this election?
Yes, I believe that's how it works, yes.
And you're on YouTube. I mean, this is recorded. What do you want the community to know about this ask? It failed the first time. What do you want to say that would help your effort to make it past the second time?
I know this first time around, out of 11,600 votes, we had lost by 200. And we do kind of have the the townships that we kind of lost biggest in. But our goal is to get out there in front of these townships now with the board members that we have. And we're going to come up with a flyer and have a pamphlet and stuff to hand out. I think the biggest question was the why. Why do you guys need a new facility? And everybody saw it on the ballot is not to exceed $18 million and probably had a sticker shock that they didn't even know that we needed a new facility. So now that the word's kind of out there that we are looking for a new facility, our goal is to, like I said, get in front of them and answer all these questions that we can at the township level, as well as kind of work with Katie. She has some good ideas and try to get out in front of it and explain to the people the why.
Good, thank you.
And you held an open house last time.
We did have an open house. Not a whole lot of people showed up. People that did show up are people that had already voted in our favor, surprisingly. But we are going to have some more open houses, and I like each one of you guys to, whenever you're driving by there, to come in. That way we can give you a kind of tour of why we're looking at a new facility. If you guys stop in the front office there, give me a call. I'll set up a time that I'm there. We're for sure there. Mike's there, Scott's there, and we can give you guys a tour, just kind of show you firsthand what we're looking at.
Right, speaking just for myself, the why question is easily answered if you go through the building. Gary and I had the opportunity to take about a 2-hour tour through there as much as 3 years ago, and no question that the original piece of that building was 1930s.
Yes, this April is 96 years old. Two double barrels up front. And the concrete brick that those buildings are made out of were made right on site as well.
So the commissioner and I's question, this is not the way she's asking it, but got to make sure you get that message crafted properly. I personally would like to see less overlap between the Maples and the your request, but for me, that's, as I was counseled last year, that's up to the voters. That's not up to me. Yeah,
We have this.
you're talking about construction. I'm
Right.
talking about assessments of millages.
No, I get that, but. Time is.
Yeah. Other comments or questions? Katie, I'd ask from my own benefit as we were scheduling the agendas, when would we be asking to take action on this?
Tammy, have you received the calendar from the Bureau of Elections?
I have not received anything with dates for August or November.
That's
So-
what we're waiting for.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So once we get that calendar of dates from the Bureau of Elections and we have a timeline from them, then we can schedule it on a future agenda. But at this point, the elections technically haven't been called, and so we don't have dates lined up yet.
So Bob, my commitment as the chair here is as soon as we can get it in front of the board to take action, we will.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. And if we could, might be too much to ask right now, but if we could just get a nod, just so we can, to move forward with just an idea, of spending time with engineers and that kind of stuff to get ballpark figures of what the new building could cost. You get a nod from somebody, one of you?
And not for me, because I heard it, but voted to decide. Building is higher need.
I don't think we question the need.
Yeah, okay.
Can I ask our clerk, has there ever been a situation where an entity was willing to pay for an election and needed this board's approval and it wasn't granted?
Not that I am aware of.
Thank you. Just for your information, this last week, there was a fire up in the UP over, I think by Houghton area. And it had the same type roof as what ours does. Anyway, they lost a bunch of snow removal equipment and some trucks. Because they didn't have any fire suppression. If we had something like that happen here, it'd be catastrophic. You can't just go to the store and get another truck. It'd be years before we got trucks back on the road. Really important.
No fires.
What's that?
No
No
fires.
fires. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Good. Thanks, gentlemen, for being here today. Jim, you're gonna make all the meetings, I guess, right? I saw him last week. If there's nothing else on that subject, we have consideration. You stopping me? Okay, what for? The break? Oh.
Yeah.
A break has been requested. Why don't we make it 10 minutes? We'll be back at 11:25.
Everyone's unmuted.
Okay, we're under new business. C, Katie?
All right. So within your packet is an amended resolution establishing the jail commissary fund. Benzie County has had a commissary fund for quite some time. And recently we adopted the resolution to officially establish the commissary fund, which was at the direction of the chart of accounts established by the Michigan Department of Treasury, as well as our legal counsel. In conversations with the sheriff and the undersheriff, there was the request to really expand the use of those funds from what our initial resolution indicated. And after speaking with our legal counsel, they also said there really isn't rules per se as to how those funds could be spent. And so what is in your packet today is a blue and red lined document, which expands the use to be law enforcement operations versus very targeted towards the jail. And it also adds in the items such as tablets and computers. So you'll notice the original resolution says payphone time. Payphones have really gone by the wayside, unfortunately. And folks are getting their phone time in a lot of times by FaceTime on a tablet or a computer. So we're working to memorialize the practice that's been in place in the document.
And I'd like to stress that this is a resolution changing the use of those funds. This is not a motion on the current to move money to use right
Correct.
now.
This is just the fund and its establishment.
Sheriff, do you want to make any comments on this?
I would just comment that I've spoke with Katie and yourself and others. I just had a very good conversation with Commissioner Trigg. And I think we're all on the same page as to where we're headed and why we're doing this. And it makes sense to me to continue this path so that we can best utilize all the services and help our employees to gain some knowledge and training and et cetera as a use of some of these funds.
And I also want to acknowledge, I appreciate the creativity of how to raise revenue because it's a win-win. It's a win for the inmates and it's a win for the sheriff's office.
Yes, I believe so.
Questions or comments on this request?
I did leave payphone in there for nostalgia.
Yeah, times have changed a little.
If there's not, I'd entertain a motion. We did. Board of Commissioners adopts resolution 2025-9. Resolution establishing the jail commissary.
Markey will support.
Any comments or questions before we call for the vote? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Janai,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Trigg,
Yes.
motion carried.
Katie?
Thank you, Mark.
So the next one in your packet is a budget amendment regarding some of the funds in the jail commissary fund that we have. And this is to move some of those funds over to the 425 for training purposes. In your packet, you'll see the budget amendment request, which was prepared by the undersheriff, both of them. And this is to, like I said, move those funds so that we can utilize them for our staff.
Make the motion that the Board of Commissioners approves the use of $13,000 in funds from the jail commissary for training and equipment for corrections deputies and road patrol deputies and authorizes the transfer of funds to 425 equipment replacement fund.
I get support? Open it up to questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Trigg,
Yes.
Janai,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right,
Thank you all.
you bet. Thank you.
The next one in the packet is the contracted IT services with Carhu Cyber. I did ask that Michael be here, so if there's any questions that are above my pay grade when it comes to IT, Michael would be best suited to handle those. As you know, the county contracted with Carhu Cyber 18 months ago to handle network security and network infrastructure. In addition to, they helped us with some of that on-site IT as we work to establish a position and what that position would look like, which is where we cue Michael. So in your packet, you will see a proposal from Carhu Cyber. That proposal is what was budgeted for the fiscal year. So as far as the dollars go, that is the budget.
This includes network security. It includes the endpoint user checkups. It includes IT management from a sense of far away, as well as making folks available to be on site a couple days a week and remote all the time. They really serve as the backup to Michael. Michael is our person day to day, but if it's something that Michael needs assistance with or needs to elevate, he naturally calls Carhu Cyber from there. So I will lend any questions to him if you have any.
Katie, just to kick it off, if I could, I know that we're dealing with network security, and this conversation you and I had does limit us to some things we can say publicly. Is that right?
Yeah, so high level, when it comes to this proposal, we can speak about, but if you're going to be asking some pinpointing questions about our network and, you know, what's involved, what happens behind the scenes, I would request that that be more of a one-on-one conversation with Michael and myself, because in the world of cybersecurity, we don't want to share, you know, certain things publicly for those who may watch on YouTube in the future.
I won't be asking any of those in-depth questions. What I do want to be sure of, this is, we know that the service, the internet service we were being provided in the past, this is, we've raised the bar with Karu and everybody.
Not internet service, but network.
Network
Yeah.
support. Is that right? Network support.
Correct.
Okay, the price tag on it is shocking. And I just want to make sure that we know they're competitive and that proportionally to our budget, that this makes sense.
Yeah, so this isn't terribly much more than they charged us initially. Why it looks so different is initially it was actually 2 contracts. There was the network security side of it and managing the infrastructure and the network. And then there was, remember, Sophia's time. And so now it's all into lump sum. It's some of Sophia's time as well as the different things within managing the network. Based on the proposals we received when we chose Carhu, this is still low. They were all much more than this from 18-ish months ago when we did this. I know VC3 requoted us, which is who we came from, and theirs was well over $130,000, if I remember correctly. So Michael's in this space. I don't know what your perspective is on cost.
Yeah, so my perspective on cost is not a lot. I wasn't part of the RFP process when that happened. So what I can speak to is sort of the day-to-day operations and how much value I get from working internally with knowing I have them as a resource. Part of what I do day to day is even when Sophia is our on-site person, she's here today, so I can be here to answer questions if needed. But she's available to me basically 24/7, even though she's only here 2 days a week. And she's comfortable and I'm comfortable with, we talk constantly about if there's issues or changes or things that need to be fixed. We have constant communication back and forth. So even though we're really only paying for her an average of 2 to 3 days a week, she's a 24/7 resource for me. So behind her is the rest of the entire Carhu team that we're also getting with that contract. I know for sure that I cannot do it all by myself. So there is a very significant value for me in our new IT department to have a resource like that available. Yep.
I see it's a 1-year contract. Would there be a cost savings, or is there an opportunity to have a 3 to 5 year contract so we can look down the road a little bit further?
I asked Kurt and Quinn that on why it's an annual contract again, and they said because we're still pretty new in this relationship, their comfort level was to do annually until we really have all the kinks worked out, and then we can have more of a seamless next couple of years. We're still in almost a state of flux where every time we upgrade something, the internet goes out for a day or, different things like that. And so their comfort level was let's get to a point where when we change out a switch, the server doesn't go down before we commit to this 5-year process, because we may get to a point next year when there's 6 big projects and they're like, hey, this is out of scope and, those sorts of things. So they want to get to this happy relationship where the network is secure and the upgrades and the maintenance that they're performing with Michael before committing to long-term, because our system is put together by many vendors over many years, and it's quite the spider web they're unraveling all the time as they go through the system.
Thank you.
So the decision, Tim, I know you want to get that question, but just to follow up, the decision to not have it more than be 1 year is actually the service providers, not ours.
Yeah, they because they could severely over or severely undershoot for that cost, because as they continue to go through the system and they're building this beautiful network, that's the goal, is this beautiful network. You know, there's unknowns. There's a lot of unknowns. Benzie County has had various IT vendors over the years, and things have somewhat been piecemealed together on certain things. And so they're trying to make a seamless system for us.
Just not often I run into that scenario.
I would just like to point out that, if you look at some of the cybersecurity threats, that occurred around us, Wexford County, Grand Traverse County, I think this is a great value, to be quite honest, and the experiences that we've had with this IT vendor has been very positive, at least from my point of view.
Tim has been involved a bit more from the IT perspective. So.
Your questions or comments, please?
I'll just say that I had questions and they were submitted and they were answered very well, and I was impressed.
You had good question. Gary, any comments or questions on that?
know anything about this.
Look at him, he's using a pen on an iPad, for goodness sakes.
They are kids, but they do an excellent job.
Listen, they're gonna get younger all the time too.
I know.
If not chronologically, from our perspective, they will. Would you be willing to?
Yeah. I make the motion that the Board of Commissioners approves the service agreement with Carhu Cyber in the not to exceed amount of $136,000 for system administration, network management, and related support. And such agreements subject to its form by legal counsel and authorizes the chair to sign, with funds available in the computer support account lines in the general, ambulance, jail, solid waste, animal control, buildings department, veterans, and central dispatch funds.
Nice seconds.
Additional comments or questions?
The only other thing that I'll note is when we were with VC3 and IT Right, there were many pass-through costs. And so when you specifically would approve a contract in the past with them, you would approve the contract with them, but then there was all these other subsidiary transactions that happened with them. When we transitioned to Carhu, we made everything directly with Benzie County, so there's no more of this pass-through. And so our Microsoft licensing and such is all billed directly to Benzie County versus it being a pass-through like it was with IT Right, where there was sometimes markup. So we did approach that in that way to get the best best bang for our dollar by taking out the middleman and as much as we could.
A trailing question I would have is, within our general liability insurance policy, do we have coverage if there's a network breach?
Yep. So we carry some coverage with the MMRMA, as well as Carhu carries coverage in addition to that.
Okay. And the fact that we have a company that's backing us up, do we get any relief on the premium, or is it an expectation that we would have a company like this?
So as of today, the MMRMA is actually still providing cyber liability free of charge to its members. So we're not paying. I am being told by our representative that there's a cost coming in the near future because the MMRMA is having trouble covering that cost because of the influx of cybersecurity breaches. But as of today, the MMRMA is still covering that portion for the counties.
Okay, great. Other comments? Roll call, please.
Knight,
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Brigg,
Yes.
Not,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
motion carried.
So the next packet in your item involves our various law enforcement, central dispatch, and emergency management, as well as Frankfort City Police in our county. So Corey alluded to this morning that he'd be talking about it this afternoon, but we have a project ahead of us that is to encrypt the radios used by law enforcement and first responder, well, not all first responders, but law enforcement in Benzie County. This went through the Central Dispatch Advisory Committee, and they have been talking about this for countless months. this radio upgrade. And so I'm not going to take the thunder from Corey. I'll let him go through the project. But in a nutshell, we have to do this. The state is telling us we have to do this, but they're not offering to pay for it. Surprise.
So I'll kind of just start from the beginning of when we were kind of aware this was coming and to where we are today. So if you'll hang on with me for just a few minutes here, it has been over a year. There's a few things I want to touch on just to make sure that we have all the information that we're discussing today. So this morning I mentioned a lean audit that we had, right? And I used that as a talking point for our dispatcher of the year and how she got 100% in our data finding. In that same statement, there's another side of that audit that involves technology, networking, things like that. That's where this falls into. And when we talk about the findings from that audit, I'll just use plain English terms. We call them dings. We got dinged on it. It was a finding because we were fortunate or unfortunate, I guess, depends on how you're going to look at this. Our audit was very early on in this new auditing process, these new rules. So all we got was a ding that had no consequences to it. They said, we understand this is really early. All you need to do is articulate to us that you have a plan, that you're working on a plan in the future to comply with this. And that's the end of it. So that was, again, roughly a year ago. February of last year was our audit. Before that audit, a neighboring county or a nearby county, Antrim, they got the same ding. They were not afforded the same grace as we were because their audit involved the FBI also. There's no rhyme or reason as to why or where the FBI chooses to audit with the state, but it's two different bodies performing a very similar audit. So the FBI said, we're going to have a finding on this, but you need to comply with it sooner than later, was the summary of that. The state said, listen, there's a lot of things going on. This is a really big conversation, really big topic. It's never been enforced before. This is going to cost a lot of money. So the state side of that audit said the same thing to Antrim that they said to us. Have a plan in place, articulate that to us, and we'll see where we're going with it. So after our audit, I kind of already knew this was coming. At that time, Michael was my deputy director, and he was also the lean lasso, which means he has a lot of intimate knowledge on the network side. So he's a great resource for us. We had already had conversations before our audit. We saw it coming. We knew it was going to happen. So after our audit, sure enough, it was a finding. And we had that conversation and said, listen, the end goal is going to be the same. It's just a matter of how long and how we get there. We're going to have to do it. We're going to have to get there. We're not really paving the road or first to the game, so to say. Everybody's going to follow the very similar path. But the opportunity that I saw was if we got ahead of this, we're not going to be fighting for the same funding and the same state resources to help us reach the end goal. If we wait too long, we may delay this even further. And the end date that is of concern is October of 2026. It will be a finding with consequences. It's a sanction finding from the state. So what that means is they then put us on notice for not complying, and there are consequences where they will take away our access to lien if we don't comply with it. As far as trying to pin them down on exactly what that means, well, you could imagine what that conversation looks like with the state. They don't have an exact answer to it. They kind of rolled this out and without a good framework to move forward with for everybody to follow. So the end result is still the same. We do have to do it. It's in our best interest to do it sooner than later for some of the things that I was talking about. Some of the things that are consistent also is the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. There is an opportunity, the sooner we act on this, that we may be able to encourage our vendor to apply some sort of discount. There's no firm number on that, but they've indicated it may be a possibility. So there may be some cost savings. Also, we are going to have to involve the state to get this programming done. So again, if we're a little bit earlier to this, we can actually use them in a timely manner and get our equipment back. We don't have a lot of backup resources to deploy. So if we wait too long, now we're going to be stuck in a pipeline waiting for the state. The reality of the timeline, once the state has it in their hands, if we move on this timeline, take action today, is 3 months. If we wait longer, that could double, that could triple. And so we really can't afford that from an end user perspective. So that's the high level. Any questions on that? How we got here and why we're here, sort of thing?
I think we get it.
I will note that the approval that's in front of you today is just for Benzie County.
Yes.
For central dispatch, the sheriff's office and emergency management. The city of Frankfurt, while they're going to work with us on this project in the same timing fashion, they will pay for their own materials and radios. So.
Yes.
Does that include fire departments and
Nope, so-
villages and everything else? We're
Just-
gonna pay for all that, or we're not required to do all?
So as of right now, this request is only law enforcement. There is conversation with not a whole lot of merit at the moment for EMS involving HIPAA. Has no traction that I'm aware of. I've placed feelers out there. I've asked for anybody to inform me when that's coming, to at least loop me in. Even at the state level, they said all it is conversation, but no action at this time. So in the future, yeah, there's potential it could. Right now, no, there is not.
You guys can, so Headley thing says that if they mandate something, they're supposed to pay for it. They never have, never will.
Well, and part of what's
So why do we
unfortunate
deal with it?
about this is, and I will not throw anybody under the bus in the statement, but this requirement, A, is not just Benzie County, it's statewide, but it's actually been in the security policy for many years. It was never enforced. It was never actually audited to. It was never a topic to be audited until last year they started it. So it's always been in there, and I imagine that would be a potential response of, well, it's always been in there, you just never did it and we never audited to it.
Well, I bet you if you check the timeline, it was done after Headley was in. So we can go
Yeah.
from anywhere you want with that, just saying. I'm one of those stupid fools that believe when you tell somebody something, you follow through with it. Obviously.
There's more than one of you then.
Two of them.
How much of this is coming out of fund balance?
So I was just actually looking at that. So in conversations with the undersheriff as well as Corey, there are some funds that can come from other funding sources, central dispatch and 425. And so out of the general fund specifically, it's about $140,000. Of that 140, I would probably take about 80 to 100 from fund balance.
So this is gonna make it so the communications transmitted over the air is encrypted.
Only specific. So it will only be what's considered CGIS transmissions. To not go too far down a technical rabbit hole. When we talk about lean and CGIS, there's certain information that someone's driver's license, their history, their criminal history, things like that, that's considered protected under CGIS. That is the type of information that will be encrypted. And so we will move that radio traffic to a completely different channel and encrypt only that one so that we can maintain open communication with all of our partner agencies and still maintain interoperability. So the short answer is yes, but we're redirecting to another channel.
Okay, so does this also allow for encryption on other channels or talk groups as well?
It could, yes. Yep. And part of the, those are good questions. Part of the actions, so when you look at the letter that's from me, that kind of gives a high level summary and then some of the recommendations, that is exactly what was put in front of the 911 advisory board. After it came out of the ad hoc committee, the same way, went to the advisory board. That kind of lays that out and kind of lays the groundwork for when and if there is future encryption. These are the steps we need to take and the direction we need to go and make sure that we're maintaining open communication so we're not closing the door on anybody that needs to talk to us.
Okay, and these costs, this is software or is this equipment replacement?
Both. There are certain items that are well beyond their life. We've kept them alive and they will no longer accept any of this. And so those are replaced. There are some that are newer. As an example, a majority of the mobile radios, which are the ones that are installed within the patrol vehicles, those can be upgraded, not replaced. There are a few that still need replaced. As far as the portables, I would say it's probably about 50-50-ish. Some can be upgraded, some can't. So it really comes back to that life of that radio. They're so old that they just can't handle it. But there's two pieces. Well, technically there's three. There's a replacement, there's a software, and a hardware. And that's all been worked out by yours truly. I'm trying to figure out which radio needs what and the right route to get there.
Just made a statement about, when and if there's another encryption update in the future. We have no way to plan for this. Is that what you're saying?
Not more than what we've done, no. Because the state, I won't speak for the state, but they could do the same thing with radio traffic for EMS agencies to hospitals, which is what the conversation is right now. That hasn't taken any traction. And they could say you have to do it and do the same, this idea of unfunded mandate. So there's potential. I just don't want to take action on something like that if we don't have to yet. Because when we talk about, I'll speak specifically for Benzie County, none of the portables for EMS will handle it. It'll be a full replacement.
Those are portables.
I think 2016 was that grant cycle.
That was quite a while ago.
That's old
So-
for radios.
Everything's old.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but doing this stuff for law enforcement kind of paves the way in case you need to do that for the EMS for Hearn, transmitting patient data. The stuff's already in place. It'd just be upgrading or replacing the radios and maybe some tweaks.
Yes. Yep.
Questions? Sheriff, do you have anything you want to add to this?
Oh, just that, my undersheriff, Undersheriff Hubert was part of the ad hoc and we've all been in the conversation and I'm completely on board, obviously. It's a necessary evil, I guess, that we're faced with and I want to comply because it's very important to our operations to have that lean capability and we need to comply and we need to take care of business here. So I'm in favor of moving forward.
Rebecca?
Just wanted to mention that, don't think I haven't tried already to find free money for this project, either through MDARD grants or whatever. We're constantly working to do that. And I will continue to do that as we move forward with the project, but because it's such a large project and because it will be implemented statewide, that money's going to be tight unless the state just says, okay, we're going to give you some because we made this happen. And I don't see that happening. So everybody is going to vie for the same kind of project money, but I am trying to find it.
Okay, appreciate that. Other comments or questions for any of the presenters? And before we move for a motion, I do want to make the observation that we frequently get stuck with these mandates that we end up having to fund. And I think it's worth going back to MAC, the association, asking them where they stand on this. We've got a legislative conference coming up soon, I think. And maybe even talking with our state senator representatives, because this is just got to stop, where they insist we do these things, but find it within our budgets. When I see that we've got billions of dollars available at the state level, and they're looking for ways to put it out, but yet they say they won't fund this, it just has no credibility with me at all. All right, that's my commentary on it. I'd entertain a motion. Or did we do that already?
I'll make the motion. The Board of Commissioners approves the radio encryption upgrade project as required by the state of Michigan and then not to exceed amount of $165,000 with funds available in the Central Dispatch Fund, General Fund, and Equipment Replacement Fund, and authorizes a budget amendment from the General Fund fund balance for such project.
Would you like to support that?
Yeah. Big sports.
Great. Again, questions, comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Bauer,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
you're not,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
motion carried.
Feel hostage, do you?
Yep.
The next item on the agenda is finally the master plan update adoption. We spent quite some time going over the master plan. You'll recall the wonderful study sessions we had monthly with Networks Northwest. In your packet, I have included all the comments received written to date, as well as a link to the addendum itself. What we are asking to be done is to adopt the addendum as presented, incorporating the comments that were received. And then we will place all those comments on the website with the addendum, which is already there. It's also there with the original master plan itself. It was agreed upon that our next 5-year go around will take a deeper dive into the master plan and a potential full rewrite. Whereas this time we just did an update, adding an addendum to the existing plan, because there's a lot of things happening in the wing that in 5 years will make more sense to do the rewrite.
I think what's important here is we did acknowledge, we heard the community, we've got it into the document, but it didn't cause us a full rewrite to do that.
Correct.
I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion that the Board of Commissioners adopts the 2024 master plan addendum update.
Support. Trigg, seconds.
We got it. It works either way. All right, comments, questions? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Trigg,
Yes.
Janat,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Sauer, motion carried.
Okay, we will see this again someday.
You will. The next item on, and it seems like you're seeing a lot of regional materials management, and you are. What's in your packet today is an amendment to the bylaws for the regional team. At the last meeting, you'll recall that our board appointed Commissioner Trigg to also serve on that committee, in addition to Mary Pitcher and Bill from Sutton's Bay. The other counties have also chose to appoint a representative from their commission board. And so we are needing to update our bylaws to allow for the up to 13 members, because the original bylaws only allowed for up to 11. So pretty boilerplate. And this is something that all 3 county boards will approve.
So Trigg moves that the Board of Commissioner approves the Materials Management Planning Committee bylaws for the regional committee to include up to 13 members.
9 seconds.
Thank you. Opportunity for comments?
Any funding coming from the state yet?
So we actually have a meeting next. We actually have a meeting coming up for the regional materials management on the 14th. And so I will learn more at that time. There's also a webinar too coming up that we're going to be sitting in on. I invited Christy to sit in on as well, to really talk about that and figure out how that funding is going to come through. Still, though, to our knowledge, it's going to be based on reimbursement. So we're going to have to deal with that. But the money will
Pick and choose what they.
Right. We still haven't gotten the clear direction on whether or not the work we've done up until now is going to be reimbursable, or if it's just after a certain date, which is, we understood differently at the beginning. And so we'll learn a lot more on Friday at the meeting.
Good question. Any other comments? Looking for a motion?
Here we go. Got support. I'll just roll.
Roll call.
Janat,
Yes.
Markey,
Yes.
Nye,
Yes.
Sauer,
Yes.
Trigg,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right, I think that takes care of our new business. Why don't we move into commissioner reports, and Commissioner Nye, I'll start with you.
I just had a couple meetings. The Village of Benzonia had really exciting news. After a very, very long road, they have achieved RRC certification. That's redevelopment ready certification through the MEDC. That is implementing all of their best practices in several different areas. It's a huge accomplishment for a village in our area. My congratulations to them. It also makes them eligible for match on main funds. That makes their business corridor. The businesses are eligible for a $25,000 grant opportunity because of this certification. And for those business who are interested in how that works and how they would become or how they would apply for that, they need to go directly to the village and talk with them. The village also met with MDOT regarding efforts to make the top of the hill safer. A bunch of different options were discussed regarding a pedestrian island in the middle, flashing lights, more signage to use a crosswalk. So they're gonna look at all those options and find out what they can do to slow traffic down and get people across that road safely. I had agenda review, also met with Katie, our chair, with Paul Oliver to discuss options regarding EMS Station 3. And then I also attended the Crystal Lake Beulah Beach Remediation and Stormwater Reduction Information Session at the Mills Community House. This project is 10 years in the making. It all stemmed from the bad readings in Crystal Lake with E. coli. And there was a presentation followed by questions. The Conservation District was there, Beulah's engineers were there. They showed mapping of where catch basins and different things they're gonna put in to catch that runoff when big storms hit. And so they can reduce the bad readings in Crystal Lake. That's all I have. Oh, and I have one more thing. I'm sorry. I reported last time that I had arranged a meeting with Tim Malone to meet with the business owners in downtown Beulah. There was a mix up in time. He will be present at the Village of Beulah meeting tonight to discuss ways to make cell reception in Beulah, the Village of Beulah, better. Now it's all I have.
Questions or comments?
Discussion with Paul Oliver, what sense did
If I could pause just a moment, I've asked the administrator to give us an update on that.
Okay.
Could you just hold that off for a moment? Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Rhonda, I do have one. With respect to some type of mechanism on 31 there, where you're talking about to slow traffic down. That has to be with MDOT's cooperation, right?
Yeah, I mean, but there's different elements. I think the road commission is involved too. I mean, if they're talking about making it more well lit. You know, the village holds an easement from the center of the road out, but you get a bunch of different entities involved and everybody has to be in cooperation and be on the same page that this needs to happen. So it just depends on what the solution ends up being with regard to who needs to approve it.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't be more supportive.
Yeah.
Something has to happen there.
Yeah.
As businesses continue to open up there year round, that gets pretty hazardous coming through there. Thank you. If there's no other questions, Christie.
So I went to a WebEx of Senator Alyssa Slotkins, and she basically introduced her team to local leaders. At the time, the federal funding freeze had just been revoked, and she cautioned us local leaders to still pay attention to executive orders and bring issues forward to her office. She also talked about making sure we have a plan for our ARPA money, and she thanked the local leaders for doing what we do. I also attended the Lake Township meeting the other day. We had a presentation on how issues can become regulations or ordinances. I seemed pretty timely. A big thing that was talked about at that meeting was short-term rentals. There was somebody who requested time on the agenda to express some discontent with the STR ordinance. And later in the public comment, there was actually quite a bit of support for the STR ordinance. So they're just going through a little something there. There's something else that I noted is that for their cleanup day, they use Northern Disposal for scrap. I couldn't remember. That's not what we used here, right? We didn't do scrap, did?
Yeah, the county doesn't hold like junk days and cleanup days. The county is very specific. We have a recycling program, household hazardous waste, electronics, and tires.
Okay. Anyway, I kept that forward because I don't know. I thought there might be some synergy there. And then Josh Mills also is holding office hours in Lake Township. I thought that was pretty neat. And the park bids were voted on, and a local company actually got the job, and so that was pretty exciting. Yes, and then as you mentioned, Mary Pitcher, who is the supervisor of Lake Township, is on the materials management. That's what I have. I only had those two things between the last meeting.
You don't need to apologize. Any comments or questions for Christie?
She said something.
Yep, so yeah, so it's the end of,
Lake
there.
Michigan Drive.
All the way out.
Yes, the mouth of the plat there. Yes, so, yeah, they Lake Township owns a little sliver of that. And so they're looking to upgrade it, make it a little better. I think put a boat launch in a canoe, something. And so, yeah, they're looking to
Sure.
upgrade the mouth of the plat.
Just for clarification, where they retrieve the canoes and they need to upgrade that because it's deteriorated over the years. They've been looking at it for a couple of years through their Parks and Rec. And they authorize the expenditure of the funds to start work, I think, this spring. And just for clarification, what you heard on scrap was scrap metal. And that there's always been an individual out of honor that's done that. And now that they've got new leadership in the township, they're looking at bidding out who collects the scrap metal.
Oh, okay, I didn't.
There's two different things happening that day. One is just to take junk, and then and then people bring their scrap metal there, and they have somebody else collect that.
Okay, thank you.
I don't, I've been listening to it for 9 years. So.
I know. No, I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
All right, anything else, Christie? Gary?
What? Avoid it.
All right, we'll move on then.
Okay. Buildings and grounds. I'm sure Katie will bring you up on the side. Sue with EMS, I think we good. Worked out a cleaning contract and possibly looking at maybe hiring somebody part-time. Cleaning for both facilities if I'm not. So that's something to look forward to. And then Rebecca brought something up about thing in Frankfurt there and possibly T-Mobile be on there. I'm not, but anyway. He made the statement that it's gonna cost us about 20 grand a year. Now. And for some of that, I think that would be good thoughts ahead. Went to the two townships, Whitefield Township, coming up with the casino may want to build a hotel there. They own the property on the opposite side of Hoadley. They want to access 115 from that property, so that puts it instead of Benzonia Township, and puts it into Joyfield and Benzonia Township. It'll be interesting to see what they're doing. Best of luck. Village of Thompsonville last night. Still working on the water problems with meters and stuff. I think they've finally come to some conclusion where they're figuring out where it's being done and who's getting the meters and when they're getting hooked up and stuff. So too much stuff should have been done right. Hard to keep track of who got hooked up, who get hooked up. This year where they thought they were hooked up. Back water on and needless to say, in progress.
Any questions for Gary? Comments? Tim?
Central Wellness, the Community Service Relations Committee met. We went over and discussed the quality management report, and I do have a copy here if anybody would like to see it. I do believe that they do plan on having someone here at our future meeting that will cover that information as well. It's not a surprise, Central Wellness actually, they do rather they have this thing called the health homes. Used to be opioid health home. Those are doing great, and they can demonstrate that how much, like how many hospital visits didn't happen because of those health homes. The Village of Honor, they approved about $50,000 for new playground equipment. That's the result of some of that fundraising that they did. So the playground is moving forward. And they're working, the Corridor Improvement Authorities was set up, or they're working on getting that all set up. They're still in the process of, they're moving forward with it, but now they're sending out letters trying to get people to determine how it's going to be structured. And that's it.
Any questions? I've already said, I discussed with a couple of them.
No, my understanding is they sent out the mailer to everybody. Now, whether they came and knocked on the door and talked to them in person, that I don't know about.
Oh, it did.
No, the Corridor Improvement Authority.
Oh, okay.
CIA.
Couple questions, if I could, Tim. That health homes at Central Wellness you're speaking of, how does that fit in with the proposed housing for bringing people through rehab on drugs and alcohol?
So the health home is misleading. You think of a physical structure, it's not.
Okay,
Does that answer that question?
yeah, right away.
Okay.
Okay, all right. And the playground, I'm curious, did most of that money come from one individual or is that a bunch of people that?
Bunch.
Good. Nice. Hunter does a good job of supporting their communities. Anything else for Tim? If not, I'm gonna, just a couple things I'll report on briefly. I've been involved in discussions regarding the EMS station in Frankfurt, the recycling bins, and the MOU regarding participation partnerships at the airport, all of which I've asked our administrator to comment on today. A week ago Friday, Friday, the Community Action Agency did acquire the property at Indian Hill and 31 Shirley's hairstyling there. They acquired the entire building, and the goal is to bring in, as I've shared with you before, a Head Start, early Head Start, and potentially a satellite office so that we can get more services that the Action Agency offers today. So I think that that's good news. Also, I was involved in a discussion with a group that has a foundation for college tuition from the Career Tech Center. We have about 60 students out of Benzie County that go to Career Tech. They've not been able to take advantage of this foundation money because we have no representation from Benzie County. I did put them together with somebody I thought was well qualified to serve on that board. And I'm hopeful that'll work out so our students then can become eligible for some of that tuition money. That foundation's money continues to grow. And I think I'll leave it at that. All right. Katie.
Sure, probably a long list for me. So I'll start with the easy stuff. The lights on the campus, we've received some feedback from folks that the ones along 31 seem to be a bit bright, and questions about dark sky. We have worked through that, and when Blue Water Electric is here to do the other half of the campus up by the sheriff's office, we're going to work to point these ones here along 31 a bit more down. So hopefully that will appease the community when they're saying it's a bit bright there along the highway. So we are working to address that. It's just a timing issue when we have the lift here for the other half of the project. The Buildings and Grounds and you approved the proposal to clean the ducts. That was worked on this last Saturday and Sunday. They did a good portion of the building, but not everything is done just yet. My understanding is it was pretty bad, but this building was done. So I hope all of you are breathing clearly in here. This room here was done. And so, but we're still working to do the other half of the building up front here. The issue that was run into is because of the way the HVAC system was put in. Typically an HVAC system, everything's all connected, right? And it's this maze of pipes. We have blocks. And so they run through and they hit a block and then they can't access this portion of the building. So you have to go up and through the rooftop to come down and do that portion of the building. We kind of anticipated running into some hiccups because our understanding is it's never been done. So they are coming back to do the other portions of the building, but because of the hiccups ran into, they couldn't do the whole building on Saturday and Sunday, but they got everything they could get done on Saturday and Sunday. And then more will be coming back to do the rest of the building. But this room was done, so the air is cleaner in here. So wonderful news. The MAC conference is coming up in April 7th through the 9th. This is a legislative conference in Lansing. Registration is now open. And so if you would like to attend, please let myself know or Stephanie know, and we'll get you all signed up, get you a room booked so that you can attend that. Benzie County was asked to serve on a panel regarding network security and IT. And so I have invited Michael to attend with us, and Michael's going to serve on that panel with me at the legislative conference. So I invite you all to come and participate. A really great conference. There's a lot of interaction with state officials, and so great conversation and networking happens at that conference.
Katie, before you move on, the date again for that conference?
The 7th through the 9th.
And has anybody signed up or has an interest in going to that?
Which month?
I do. April 7th through the 9th. So typically, the agenda hasn't been published yet, but typically on that Monday, they'll start a little later in the day, so you can drive down Monday morning and then you come back Wednesday afternoon.
So those.
So Rhonda, you're interested?
Yes.
Then were you interested?
I've looked at the dates.
You'll communicate with Katie if you want to go.
Oh, yes.
And you heard Gary say he's interested.
Is workers' comp? Yeah, I was saying yours is
Christie?
Christy. Yeah.
Then you'll reach out to Evan and Bob.
Yep. And then are you interested, Art?
I'll have to get back to you.
Okay.
I may not be back in town yet, so.
All right. So for sure, Christy and Rhonda. All right.
Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay. So the next thing, broadband, we haven't had a lot of updates on broadband lately. I'll give a high level update, but then I have more coming for you in written form in the near future. So when it comes to broadband infrastructure, build out is happening under the Robin Grant. We are gearing up for BEADs with Cherry Capital Communication. We have been reaching out to Ascentech and Charter Spectrum to ask them their intentions for Benzie County application into BEAD, because the idea is while healthy competition is good, we don't want to compete for the same addresses with Ascentech and Charter. If we can maybe work together, and if there's going to be multiple applications, Cherry Capital takes these addresses, Ascentech takes these addresses, and so forth, so that then there's multiple strong applications versus competing for addresses within the same application. BEAD funding is very specific. They will only award funding for an address once. And so if Ascentech and Cherry Capital go after the same addresses, the rest of the addresses on that application then miss out if one's not awarded. So the idea is to work together for those BEAD applications. I will be coming forward to you for letters of support for that application in the future. That application window closes in April, so there is some time. But I do have Cherry Capital and Mitch Shapiro working on a written handout for you to kind of talk about what's been going into BEAD up until now. Mitten funding is still in limbo. Mitten funding is the funding we were awarded for digital equity. That is still in limbo. That is stuck at the federal level still. Obviously, there was the freeze and then the rescission of the freeze and all the things. And so Even the recent meeting with State of Michigan, my high officials, they also said, sorry, we don't know. And so Mitten is in limbo as far as when it's going to be fully awarded and then given to our region. So while that is taking away some of our regional momentum when it comes to digital equity, I had a really nice meeting last week with Jackie Borzan about trying to figure out some grassroots, free or very cheap options just to work here in Benzie County so that we're not losing that limelight momentum behind broadband. And so we're talking about some more local ways to impact digital equity that we could do, working with the libraries and the schools potentially to get out some free grassroots type of programming in our community. So we're not losing that limelight around broadband in the community. But again, more updates coming your way in a written format. As you all know, our beloved Jackie's leaving. Tomorrow is her last day. We're going to have some breakfast in our office tomorrow morning. If anyone wants to stop by for us, a breakfast snack and say goodbye to Jackie. That'll be tomorrow morning. The budget at a glance, I should have something for you by the end of the week. So that is coming along nicely. I did lights, EMS Station 3. So we've talked about this at length today. Rhonda, Art, and I sat down with Christy and Kelly from Munson Medical Center, Paul Oliver, to reignite some of the conversations from a couple of years ago as to the potential of working with Paul Oliver and acquiring land or leasing land or something of those lines. So we went through that conversation. We looked at some aerial views of the property there and kind of looked at the layout. Paul Oliver Munson owns that essentially whole block there where the house is that we're in now. There's vacant property, there's a parking lot, and there's a daycare. They alluded to some of the future growth, obviously, of Munson and how they want to utilize that property for potential build-out growth for Munson purposes. But they made it very clear that they see Benzie EMS as a great partner and priority to the community. And if it's possible, they want to try to work with us. So in that meeting, we gave them somewhat of a deadline to work through their legal to figure out if there's even a possible transaction or relationship to be had there. The property in question, the idea would be to look at the back half of the parcel, which is closer to the garage, and see if there is the ability to, one, lease it to the county or gift it to the county or some relationship with the county. And if it is, then we would decide how to move forward, if it made more sense to go that route or to continue down the route of utilizing the garage that's on the existing Maples property. The Buildings and Grounds had also met again in the meantime and again reaffirmed to move forward with the expansion of Station 3. So we at this point are waiting on to hear from Paul Oliver to see if the relationship is to be had there or not. Christy and Kelly were assured that they could get back to us within a reasonable amount of time. 3-4-ish weeks was kind of the hard deadline given to them. I haven't heard from them to date, but I do look forward to hearing from them. If they say that nothing is possible with Paul Oliver, we will move forward with an RFP to look at the expansion of the existing garage there on the Maples property. If there is a relationship to be had there, we'll call folks around the table again and talk about that potential there. But that's kind of where that's at.
Before you leave that, Ron, anything you want to add to that now? In terms of deadlines, between the 1st of March and March 15th, and I credit Rhonda for her negotiating skills. They said 2 to 3 months, and before they got out of there, they were committing to 2 or 3 weeks. So.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Rhonda.
So we're waiting on them before we move further. But it is, like Art said, a priority of ours here at the county. So we do want to address Station 3. So we're not going to let this one go stale.
And I would want to just add to that they were keenly interested in doing something. So I think it's more likely that they're going to come back and say, legal counsel's looked at it. They've got some subcommittees that have to look at it. And there may be some kind of solution that they're involved in. I don't think it's going to be, can't really work with you. There'll be some solution that they're part of.
So more to come on that. We'll call a Buildings and Grounds subcommittee meeting when we do hear from Paul Oliver so we can talk about the response that they provided. This morning also, Matt Delzio referred to a clinical agreement with MMR. We had a clinical agreement with MMR for quite some time. That agreement had never been reviewed by our legal counsel. The prior director had simply signed it on behalf of Benzie County.
So I sent that clinical agreement to our legal counsel who tweaked it, and MMR threw up their hands and said, take our agreement or leave it. And so right now there's not a current relationship. I worked with Nicole as well as Sarah at Cole Stoker to tweak the language to make it softer language, but it still has the intent there to protect the county, which I've sent to the MMR. I almost said MMRMA. And I have asked if their legal counsel would be willing to work directly with our legal counsel to work out some sort of agreement that protects both parties, but then meets the needs of Benzie County. The agreement that they originally had in place did not protect Benzie County hardly in the least bit. And that's a problem, obviously, for me, especially given the type of work that these individuals are performing. So we are working through that. It's been quite the process, but I do think that MMR is going to come around and work with Benzie County in the near future. The next thing is the Frankfurt recycling. So we are moving forward with conversations with Mr. Reinier regarding Frankfurt recycling. I just spoke with Dave Schaefer the other day about that after I learned of some transactions that happened with the city of Frankfurt and Mr. Reinier. So there is positive movement there to move those recycling bins to Mr. Reinier's property. We're working out now some of the logistics of that and what that relationship would look like. In the past, when they were there, Mr. Reinier took care of the plowing and the grounds maintenance and things like that. But he has indicated that that's not really something he's capable of doing anymore. So now we're working with the city of Frankfurt to see if they would perform some of those duties like they do now at the current site. We're working through that three-way relationship, but being very delicate in the sense of we know that there's past tension between two of the parties. And so we are working through that. Dave has been in contact with the mayor as well as Josh to work through that process. Mr. Reinier is looking forward to it. Our thought process is probably by the time snow stops flying, hopefully, we'll get those bins moved over to that location.
Just to add two things to that. First, the mayor's been very cooperative in the city to make this happen, working with the management there. And at the risk of giving you too many accolades, your original conversation with Rainier really kind of kicked this thing off again. So thank you.
And then the final thing is the airport authority. So for some time, we've been trying to get a new MOU on the table. As you know, the original MOU was between the city and the county in 1996 to form the airport authority. Since that time, Crystal Lake Township has become a member of the authority. That was done by resolution of the authority to add the two members. And so the whole idea is to update the MOU so that all parties involved are part of that MOU, and it outlines the responsibilities between the three parties. I was able to finally get a meeting with Amy Ferris as well as Joanne Hawerda last week or the week before. I think it was the week before, and we actually had a very good and a very productive meeting. The treasurer of Crystal Lake Township was also present at the meeting, as well as an airport authority member. I have sent back the requested tweaks to Tim Perrone at Cole Stoker, who's working to tweak the new draft MOU. I do feel good about the MOU, and I do think we're going to get to an end game of that MOU. Essentially, what it would do is it amend and restate the original MOU so it has all three members in it, and it spells out the responsibilities of all parties, including the airport authority. And in that is added responsibilities of the airport authority regarding reporting and things like that. As you know, Brooke is coming to our meetings more often, but the request was that she's going to all the meetings more often so that there's more communication between the authority and the members. And so that we're working to have Tim memorialize into the document. We also are putting benchmarks and touch points into that document. So it says that the members will meet at least annually to talk about operations and the expected allocation of the different members and things like that, really formalizing that agreement a bit more. So right now I'm just waiting on Tim to make those changes. Once he's made those changes, I'll get them to Crystal Lake and the city of Frankfurt for their thought process. I also gave Tim Perrone both of the other attorneys' contact information. So if he wanted to reach out to Crystal Lake and Frankfurt's attorneys directly to work some of their legal talk out, he could do that. So I'm hopeful that we'll close that and get it to the finish line here in the near future. Is there any questions for me?
We have 100 of them.
Okay.
Get them started, Gary.
Get them started. First one is the community complaints about the light.
Yes.
Give me a number.
2?
2 people?
Three,
called?
three.
Okay, end of the discussion.
They're vocal people.
Is it prudent to back off on trying to get an RFP on that pole barn while we negotiate? I don't.
Well, that's why
feel
Rhonda
like
was.
we're leaving.
That's why Rhonda was really good about saying, no, we need to know in 2 to 3, 4 weeks. It's because we don't want to push out that RFP any longer than we really have to. And so we agreed to just wait those couple of weeks to hear from Paul Oliver before we just get started on publishing any sort of RFP. So while it's delaying it a little bit, we were very, very specific about, we don't want to delay this too terribly long.
Well, we can't. Well, in fact, quite frankly, I would hope that we're starting to put a solution together by next fall. I know there was some discussion about a year from now. That's unacceptable for me.
Yeah. Nope. We all see the priority, but we are at least going a bit down that trail to see where it goes again. And then we'll go from there.
That's it?
You're not gonna
Thought you had bigger-
You're not gonna remind me of the Betsy Valley Trail that just popped in my head.
Oh, I was gonna ask you about that.
The Betsy Valley Trail has received the designation as one of the
Oh, yeah.
2025 Pure Michigan Trails in Michigan, FYI.
Yeah.
I forgot to say that.
Did do that.
Pretty cool.
Is the arrangement with Mr. Rainier still being considered an interim solution? To move the bins there and then ultimately to a final spot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I know Josh has some grand ideas about developing city property for a more permanent solution. And I think that was really what was holding this all up, was the visioning there. And so I've made it clear that we will consider the visioning after we get this interim solution buttoned up and taken care of. Then we'll start going down that road of a more permanent solution with all that visioning.
Just for clarification, though, when you say interim, I mean, we're talking more than a year.
It could be, yeah.
Yeah, I think that he's willing to.
Oh, that was the sense I had too.
yeah.
It wasn't Mr. Rainier who was putting an end date or a timeline on the project.
Right,
so.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Anything else? Christie? Good? All right, good report.
Thanks.
All right, under correspondence, you've had a chance to look at that, or you can take a chance to look at it. The only comment I'll make is the with the tribe's 2%. I was not able to make it there that day, but I did call and talk to the organizers, told them that Benzie County was grateful. And quite frankly, I feel that reaching out to them that way rather than being there probably carried more weight because now they knew we were there. Anything else for the group? Last public comment. You would state your name, please.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Hubbard. I am a 31-year resident of the county and I live in Gilmore Township. I'm here today speaking as a private citizen about the contents of the article published on MLive on January 31st of this year entitled "Criminally Insane Man Killed Woman After Deputies Failed to Act, Lawsuit Says." I first want to say that I come from a law enforcement family and I am supportive of law enforcement. However, I took personal time from work to be here this morning because I feel compelled to share my thoughts after reading that article. I believe there are many people in Benzie County who care deeply for women who live here and who would find these accusations against the officer's conduct and decision-making in this article, if true, to be completely unacceptable. I request of the commissioners as the people's representatives to set higher standards for our county law enforcement and to act on those expectations to make certain that every citizen of Benzie County feels supported in their physical safety and is treated with dignity. In addition, I would suggest that someone needs to make an apology, a public apology, to the Women's Resource Center. For decades, this organization has supported women and children in this county who have found themselves in dangerous and desperate situations. Who are we if we cannot find it in our hearts to support and to celebrate such an organization rather than to mock and disparage it. Today, I am asking the commissioners to step up to lead meaningful change in light of this tragedy, to make that effort ongoing and to communicate that effort to your constituents. You have an opportunity to do something positive in response to a tragedy and alleged shameful conduct of Benzie County officers by showing leadership in this moment. The women of this county deserve better than what happened here in February of 2022.
Ms. Hubbard, I don't want you to take our silence as uncaring. This is an opportunity for you to speak. You represented yourself very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, well, I know, but that's Kat.
So Eric Van Duzen, Benzonia. We went into a closed session earlier your agenda doesn't reflect this. It says, oh, it does. It says settlement strategy and settlement. And then you came out of closed session and you accepted the recommendation of your attorney. The OMA requires that all decisions of a public body be made at a meeting open to the public. This includes the decision to settle a lawsuit. The minutes must reflect the decision that was made. You agreed here by the recommendation to settle the litigation that Johnny McCall filed against Benzie County, Deputy Rubin, and not your gig, but against Crystal Lake Township as well, and Amy Ferris. But for your part, you settled that. I don't know if you're putting money into that, but I just went on Pacer. Oh, sorry about that. And I'll pull up the document that I just pulled up on Pacer that was filed today. McCall versus Benzie County. Mediation session occurred on February 5th, and this case settled in full, subject to governing boards making decisions. You made a decision to settle the lawsuit today, is my assumption. You did not adequately reflect in your minutes that you settled the lawsuit. And in addition to what I read you, which was case precedent off of Westlaw that I was paraphrasing for you on, that you didn't adequately state what your decision was. Secondly, back in the early 2000s, I was suing Benzie County for repetitively violating the OMA by not doing exactly what I'm telling you needs to be done, which is place on the record that you're settling a lawsuit. And if it is financial, if you're kicking in money for this settlement, that you put that on the record as well. I have to go back and look at that litigation, but I'm almost certain I have an injunction compelling you to do that in that prior litigation. So that's that issue. The second issue, this litigation that she just discussed, it was filed by the McCord family against Deputy Blank, Packard, Kozbowski, Weaver, and against Benzie County. Why wasn't that on new business today? That lawsuit, have you read it? I would think you should all come familiar with that. I think it's a 38-page complaint. There's some really egregious allegations in there, and they are yet to be proven, but there's some stuff in there that is pretty substantive on these allegations of these comments that these officers were making. I've read it, and can I have one more minute? And I would think that in addition, this lawsuit you just settled, if you look at how many times you've met in closed session to discuss that, it was filed in January of 2024. And you've now in February of 2025 settled it. How many times have you met to discuss that in closed session with your attorneys? I don't know, but I don't think it's sufficient. I would suggest that with this new litigation, you become familiar with it right now, and that you meet with your attorneys as soon as possible to discuss this in closed session. I'm not sure if MMRMA has already appointed Cummins, McClory, Davis, and Acho as the go-to guys, but you need to make a decision on whether they're the right attorneys for that job. And then moving forward, you need to make the decision on how to defend this litigation. and what your answer and affirmative defenses are going to be. What's going to be included in your joint status report that is mandated by Rule 16 of the Federal Rules of Procedure. And all these decisions need to be made by this board. You haven't delegated anyone else to do so, as far as I know, to your county administrator to make these decisions. But for a delegation of that authority, you need to make these decisions. You can't just let your attorneys lead this litigation by the nose. Thank you.
Thanks for your observation.
Lastly, you have the ability right now to correct the improper decision that you placed on the record and actually say that you settled the lawsuit and indicate how much you are paying out to settle it if you are paying something out. Thank you.
Sure. Any other public comment? For the public's benefit, I do want to close out by saying we were following legal counsel's very specific directions on how we should handle it when we came out of closed session. So I invite you to talk to the county administrator. If any of you have comments or questions on that, at a later date. Anything else? And I'd move, before I move for adjournment, we're at 20-1. I see we got an afternoon presenter here already. I know we've agreed that we would take a half hour between each meeting. Do you want to take that half hour, or do you want to shorten that for our presenters' benefit? Oh, good. It's your meeting, Rhonda. Who wants the other one? How about if we take 20 minutes?
Pardon?
What if we take 20 minutes?
Okay, but what if somebody else intended to be here? I mean, we're having an opioid discussion. I mean, that was the whole purpose of saying 30 minutes after the last meeting ended to be more transparent, consistent about when the meeting time, and then we're gonna bump it back again because it just, to me, it's we set a rule that we were gonna follow for 6 months and see how it worked, and we're already trying to negotiate it.
It's your meeting.
Yeah, it's a half an hour after the last meeting and is when we start the next meeting.
I'll take a motion for adjournment. Oh, Harry,
Second.
Jim? Questions, comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody want to stay?